This is Back to Devi, a show brought to you by Campus to Ken. This podcast specializes in collegiate football players and their potential for future fantasy success in the NFL. And we are right here in the NFL. We're right here at this portion. And I'm your host, Mike V. This is my co-host, Cory P. And we are bringing on a special guest, Matt Bruening. Matt, what's up with only 4 Buckeyes getting drafted? That's like an all-time low for you guys.
It's just because everybody came back to win the national championship in 2025.
Hashtag unfinished business.
That's what they say, yeah.
And then they feel stupid when they don't get it in the end.
Not when Julian Sands starting over Will Howard in the national championship.
Matt, no longer Devin Brown.
Put your balls on the line right here now. Who finishes the season as the starter?
For Julian Sands.
Julian Sands. Interesting.
Say it ain't so.
Yeah.
The NFL draft just concluded, right? Me and Cory had a betting thing, and I am ashamed to say that Cory wiped the floor with me. I'm not going to go through it category by category, but the final score was 7-3. 7-3, so it wasn't even close. I owe Cory a shirt from our partners at Home Field Apparel. I will be using our promo code Campus, the number 2 in Canton, for 15% off. That's Campus, the number 2 Canton. 15% off from Home Field Apparel. I'm getting him a vintage athletic shirt from our favorite universities. I'm not sure if I'm going to go like super funny, just find something obscure. I'm just going to get him a Kentucky shirt, one of those things. Maybe I'll get like something that's a car crash theme because he's a Georgia fan. But I'll think about it. That's for me to decide. Cory, are you youth large? Is that?
Hey, I am fully up to a large now. Okay, I got my dad bod rocking now. 2 kids in the tank. Like it's I'm sporting a large now. If you talked to me 2 years ago, maybe I was around that more medium stage. But yeah.
All right. Well, I'm glad to hear you're stocking up. I was about to let you know that I saw like an eagle flying overhead earlier, and I didn't want you going outside and it might get scooped up there.
Well, thank you for that. Yes, the draft was fun. I knew I was going to win. Just glad that I got 2 in the bank this year with the combine and the draft now. So very much looking forward to that shirt. We don't have a lot of news for you guys today on the college side. It's kind of a draft special bringing on Matt Bruening here. We thought it was a good way to talk about the draft as well by doing a mock draft and talking about all these players. But if you guys want to keep up on all the news across college, be sure to check out Nicholas Ian Allen on the Campus Canton YouTube page. He does a show Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays covering all the news throughout the week. And be sure to head over to our website at campuscanton.com. You guys can become a member of one of our many subscription options, some of which include access to our draft guides. Speaking of which, it's draft season now. We got you covered over at Campus Canton. Our supplemental freshman guide that came out on March 1st. That's covering this year's freshman class. As well as a rookie guide. That's our free gift to you. I believe that's getting update to the rankings. Matt, do you know anything about that?
Yeah, hopefully I would say the next week, but Colin's leaving to go to Italy, so it probably won't be within the next week. But yes, it'll be updated with like post-draft rankings and everything here once Colin gets back from his little vacay.
Okay, so you guys can expect that. That's coming free with any membership or a one-time $5 purchase. And we also have the Devi Guide. That's coming out in only a matter of days. That's 250 player profiles, advanced stats, rankings, tiers, ADP, you name it. We got you covered. That's available for $5 off on pre-order right now or the $20 purchase on the day of release. You guys are also going to get our one-of-a-kind CFF projections, our advanced metric tools, as well as the C2C winning edge. I think is going to keep you updated on all the school depth charts, the returning production through this offseason, and the transfer portal movement. It's probably one of the best cheat sheets for your upcoming drafts this season. So make sure you guys are checking out the family of podcasts and the YouTube channel to help guide you guys through the offseason.
Let's get into our mock draft. We were gracious enough to let Matt take the 101, so I don't have to make that decision myself. So thank you, Matt.
Yep.
Let's talk about these players, talk about some dynasty expectations. This will be the last time we are talking about them because they're no longer Devi players. They're now going over to dynasty. So, Matt, why don't you start us off with your first pick?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when we did this, we decided super flex tight end premium. So I think the easy answer here is Caleb Williams. You know, he has all the tools and the ability to be a top 12 fantasy quarterback. I've said it, I think, well, I wasn't on day 1, but I know we talked a little bit about it on day 2, and I've said it on some other shows recently. I would not be surprised if it takes him a year to kind of show his full potential. I think there is still a lot of his game that needs to be improved, specifically just his running around in the backfield and rushing out of clean pockets, cutting the field in half with the way he flushes out. at times. I think he trusts his arm a little bit too much. Sometimes I don't think he does a good job reading defenses. But overall, he's an extremely talented prospect. I think that the Bears, unfortunately to the guy behind my right shoulder here, I was pointing the wrong way, Justin Fields. Chicago did absolutely nothing to help him out in his few years there, but they all of a sudden did all of this to improve the offensive line and weapons around Caleb Williams. I think he's set up for success. I think he probably finishes as a top 15 asset this year and then jumps up into like that top, I still think 8 to 12. I think it's going to be hard for him to crack the top 5 personally. I think he's good, but not special. But I mean, I think he's the easy pick here at 101.
Well, they just got to do a little bit in the Dynasty Committee overreacts, put him up there real early because he's young. CJ Stroud touched QB1 right away this offseason. I don't know. I did want to say this just as like a joking matter. Did you see someone made a montage of like Caleb's worst throws and was like, Justin Fields never made these throws? Like some Bears fans were salty that Justin Fields actually left the team.
I mean, no, I did not see that, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, Justin is not the perfect prospect either. He has some issues that he needs to improve on, that lengthy throwing motion, him not also getting through his reads very quickly. But again, I don't think Caleb's going to just step in there and be, Patrick Mahomes like many in the Dynasty community think. CJ Stroud doing what he did, I think, maybe it's just me, was special. I did not think CJ Stroud was going to do what he did, especially not with Houston. But I think a lot of that comes from just how I don't think it's unfair to say CJ Stroud is light years is probably too mean. I would say a more advanced passer, specifically pocket passer than Caleb Williams is. Like his anticipation throws and the throws that he makes in the middle of the field and downfield, I don't see a lot of that from Caleb. So I still think it's kind of hard to say he's even going to be better than what CJ Stroud was as a rookie.
All right, Cory, give us the 102.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't think that we need to harp over Caleb Williams that much, but just entering now we've got the place. I mean, we assumed it anyways. Where would you think he falls in for your dynasty rankings for quarterback?
You asking me or Mike?
And any of you.
Why don't you go first, Mike? Because I have to pull up rankings because I don't do
rankings anymore. I gotta update mine too. I do them for my personal use, and I keep thinking about asking Con to put them back on the website. But I would put them somewhere between the 8 and 12, like to start off, and that's probably. I don't know. That's probably, according to Matt, that's probably his ceiling right there, and I think that's fine too. But probably in that like late QB1 territory for Dynasty, that's where I put him.
Yeah, I've got him. I mean, looking at some rankings right now, I would say probably 9-ish, right behind Lamar Jackson, but I think he should go ahead of Dak, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Tua, Brock Purdy, Anthony Richardson, all those guys. I think it's fair to put him ahead of them. So right around the 9-10 range for me as well.
Yeah, I think that feels right. I mean, even comparing him with someone like Jalen Hurts, who I think he shares some similarities with, even somewhere around that range, like because Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts kind of like right around that area. So I think that feels about right for him. But anyways, let's go on to 102 here. I'm going to follow up our Superflex draft here with another quarterback. And I know I could be taking somebody else here, but Superflex, sometimes I just believe you got to go for the quarterback. And I'm taking Jane Daniels, went number 2 overall in the draft, is going number 2 overall here as well, to the Washington Redskins. I think he's actually got a decent set of weapons over there. When you think about Jahan Dotson, has he truly been unlocked to his potential? You still got Terry McLaurin over there, who's always solid at what he does. And I kind of like Jalen Daniels' trajectory over the last 2 years. When we saw him come to LSU, we saw this growth in him, this maturation process of becoming a better overall well-rounded player, not somebody who took off so quickly out of the pocket, somebody who attacked downfield a little bit more, somebody who read the field a little bit better. And now I'm not going to say it's perfect. There are still tendencies to leave the pocket a little bit early. There's some tendencies to move on to that second read a little bit slowly, but he's always going to have the legs to rely on. And I think that's a big thing for fantasy. Even we talk about Justin Fields, a guy who probably entered, as a top 12, top 10 quarterback this season and already went down this much because, the arm didn't really back it up, but still entered the season that high. That's just because of what the legs brought you. Now, if Jane Daniels can at least be a more competent passer, then we're going to see him be kind of like in that range as well. I'm not even going to be shocked if at some point Jane Daniels is the higher ranked quarterback in this quarterback class from all these quarterbacks, at least at some point. I don't know if he'll stay there, but at least by some point, same way we've seen like Lamar Jackson kind of be near the top of his class and then fall down or whatever. Like I could see that for Jane Daniels kind of playing around that top 10 level. So I like a lot of the ability. I think he's set up okay there. I kind of like the defense of Washington too. We're got to expect a big turnaround for Washington. Hopefully Jane Daniels can be the guy to bring them that.
It's Cliff Kingsbury crawling plays. I don't know if that's a plus or minus for you,
Yeah,
but I love the Jay and Daniels take. He does something with a high ceiling. Like I'm talking about, like I feel like he's like a one read and run quarterback, and like that type either turns into Lamar or it turns into Justin Fields. Like, that's your spectrum of player, but certainly you'll have plenty of windows to sell him because his legs will be on full display. So
yeah,
I like this pick. I go with Marvin Harrison Jr. here at the 103. The wide receiver 1 here, and I just want to ask this question to the group here. If you were wide receiver needy and QB fine at the 101, which if you're at the 101, then your QBs probably aren't fine. But just hypothetical for the situation, you have good QBs, bad wide receivers. Would you recommend somebody takes Marvin Harrison 101?
I would not. No, if it's super flex, I get it. I still think Marvin Harrison's probably going to be. I think he has a chance to be up there as like a top 5 wide receiver. I still think it's hard to just put him ahead of guys like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, with what we've seen from them going into the NFL, especially when we've seen a lot of guys, and I do think Marvin Harrison is extremely talented. We've seen a lot of wide receivers who we thought were going to be incredibly good come out into the NFL and just fail. And I don't think Arizona is it's a good spot, not a great spot personally. But if you're at the 1-1, even if you are set up at QB, let's say you have, Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. I mean, those are 2 typically top 5 to 8 quarterbacks of their QB1s. You taking Caleb Williams right there just gives you an astronomical amount of value because you're going to be able to get almost whatever you want for him, or it still gives you massive advantage. If one of those guys goes down, you don't have to worry about possibly losing your league. So I'm still taking the quarterback just based on pure value.
And especially, I mean, just to echo Matt's point here, especially if you're set up at the quarterback position with a guy like Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, you're probably getting ready to push. And like we've seen rookies come in and boom pretty fast, but it's always kind of up and down. You never know how much a rookie's really going to impact in that rookie season. Like if you take this quarterback, you take Caleb Williams as an extra piece. At some point down the line, once you see who the productive players are, you could trade a quarterback for someone you know is productive and pick up somebody else to complete that pushing for that title, especially if your team's ready to contend like it looks like. So I kind of agree, just taking the quarterback and taking the higher value player. But I will say it wouldn't shock me, and I don't think it's completely crazy to take Marvin Harrison Jr. first if you want. From what we say, from what we've been watching for the last couple of years, he truly is somebody who's we think can definitely hop into that JJ tier.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Mike.
No, yeah, that's what's going with it too. It's like I look at Kyler, look at the depth chart, and like I'm gonna ask myself, like 20% target share year 1 is kind of like I think a pretty accurate and modest like projection. That's like 120 targets. You got like players like AJ Brown that's hitting like 160 targets a year. So it's like, can Marvin Harrison get up to that production? And then that's yearly wide receiver 1 production for, let's say 8 years there. I think that's worth a QB, like a high end QB like this. So I don't think the value game is probably the right angle to play off this because Mahomes is probably worth more than AJ Brown, for example. It's probably worth way more. Yeah. So if he turns out to be in that range, like you can get more off of him. But I know this is so dangerous saying this, but like Marvin Harrison feels kind of bust proof, and so
we got to clip that now.
Yeah, that'd be the only other reason I'd take Caleb is because I think you could even just him. I think you could flip him for like if you're going to a QB needy team with a Caleb Williams again. We're just using Lamar, Patrick Mahomes, whatever, any of those top 12 guys like. You could easily get not even just a straight swap, one of those top wide receivers and then something for them in a super flex league. So you can take already proven talent. Because I do agree with you. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is, for the most part, bust proof. But we've also said that about a lot of wide receivers. You may not be able to get Jamar or Justin Jefferson, but you could probably get CeeDee Lamb, who finishes wide receiver 1 last year. Puka if you do Puka, you could probably get a first-round pick thrown on there as well. Like I think you could get so much back for a quarterback that like you're getting, unless you're just a diehard Buckeye fan and you just have to have Marvin Harrison Jr. on your team. Like I would much rather take a CeeDee Lamb in a second, or I still think you might even be able to get a top end player and a first for a quarterback in a super flex league. So I'd rather do that and just completely bolster my team up than just taking a wide receiver.
All right, Matt, lead us over to the promised land of the 104.
I got to remember who I picked here, 104. So I will take Drake May. Sorry, I forgot there for a minute. I mean, obviously, a little concerned with him going to New England with them rebuilding that offensive line. You know, Mike and me, you were talking before the show, and that wide receiver core is pretty barren. It is not looking pretty, and that's honestly kind of the scary thing here with Drake May, right? I mean, if you go back to his sophomore season or redshirt freshman season, whatever they want to call it, his second year. Well, he still had Josh Downs at least, and he had an amazing season. And then last year we saw that whole wide receiver core depleted. Devontae Walker out most of the year because the NCAA screwing him, and then him dealing with the injuries. Like Drake struggled. He don't even have a Devontae Walker on his roster right now. Plus, like we said, adding, them trying to improve that offensive line, which granted he is a running quarterback. He's not just a scrambler. Like he will bring you and be dangerous with his legs. I know, Mike, we talked a little bit about during draft coverage. We both think it would be smart for the Patriots to start Jacoby Brissett to start the season and let May kind of slowly work his way in. But I do think at the end of the day, and I know we talked about this on last year's Devy call, and I will stand behind you, Mike, because I'm with you. Like, I do think we could in a couple of years, not even just because he went to the Patriots. I do think in a couple of years we could be talking about Drake May being not only the best NFL quarterback, but the best fantasy quarterback out of this class. So, like, I still think you're getting a massive steal here at 1-4. I think you could argue him over Caleb or Daniels, depending on how you feel about New England and everything moving forward.
I do get a little butthurt looking at the draft analysts giving their post NFL draft grades, and they're never giving Patriots a good grade because they always there's no wide receivers, and then the other side they're like, well, there's no quarterback. It's like there was no way for them to win. Everyone's gonna hate their first round pick no matter what. But anyway, I agree with Matt here. I think he's just an excellent quarterback. There's no weapons there. Look for them to add weapons next year. We're just looking to lay the groundwork this year. But this is a guy that the Patriots had offers for their pick. They had 2 first-round picks from the Giants, still chose them. They had 2 first-round picks from the Vikings, who then chose J.J. McCarthy later, still chose Drake May. I guess other teams still recognize that Drake May was the superior prospect. So it's definitely a building year, and I think next year you can expect the Patriots to cook. Not saying the pieces are there, but we're expecting the pieces to be there next year. Let's see if they can build around them.
Yeah, and the rumor was that Vikings had offered, I think, their first-round pick at 11, next year's first-round pick, that other first-round pick at 23, plus 23. I think a third this year and a third next year, all for that pick, and apparently was declined. So I think that was the apple of their eye as well. I mean, Josh McCown was a guy who had played with him in high school as well, or had taught him in high school as well.
Coached him, yeah.
Yeah, coached them, and I think that was kind of the apple of their eye. So a little bit disappointed to see that didn't work out, but still pretty happy with the guy they ended up with. And I will just say, just to add on to Drake May, a lot of people say he really, took a step down this year, and there was some struggles. But I will say, even if you look at the statistics, he played 2 less games this year than last year. Conference championship, I believe, and then the bowl game. And if you add another 600 yards and another 6 touchdowns, maybe through those games, his stats end up pretty close. I do think there's elements of what he did that elevated the talent around him, especially not having Devontae Walker and having guys in and out of the lineup as well in that wide receiver core. I do think there's elements to him actually raising that offense around him. So hopefully he can do some of that here as well. I mean, we're going to talk about some of the guys they drafted over there at the Patriots, but not really excited about that group.
Cory, hit us with the 105.
Okay, I'm up. Sorry. 105. I am going to Malik Neighbors, heading over to the New York Giants. And I mean, this is just a spot that maybe a team that might be down quite a bit. I don't know how we're exactly thinking about how the New York Giants are going to do this year, but I'm not very optimistic about their chances. So could be a guy who is very field ready and could play multiple positions on the lineup as well. Should be like a target hog in this offense as well. And a team that's going to be down quite a bit, I think, or at least a fair amount, and that'll end up in some garbage time points for Malik Neighbors as well. I think he does a lot of things really well. He's obviously got crazy juice. He can run really crisp routes. He's sharp he's sharp on the outside as well. Sharp against press coverage, really quick footwork as well. Not a super physical player, but a finesse player and a very good finesse player, and still has, a little bit of contested catchability, can still give you a little bit of stuff above the rim as well. So Malik Neighbors, very well-rounded player. I don't think I got to give much more analysis here. I think he would have been a player that no matter where he went, I think I would have been excited about him because I think he fits kind of seamlessly into today's NFL and could start anywhere on an offensive lineup for any team.
Yeah, QB friendly. Giants are shopping for a new quarterback. I know that's not appealing for landing spot, but it's one of those things where you just look at it and be like, he's far more talented than the rest of the players in that roster. Even if it's a smaller pie, he should get a very big slice of it. Yeah, I know some people probably argue about the target quality, but again, like volume is kind of what you're looking for in your fantasy. So
yeah, I mean, we even look at like Sterling Shepard had like a few big games with the thing just being that PPR slot guy for Daniel Jones there. So I
yeah,
mean, even something like that, like
Hodges was getting talked about for a little bit there.
yeah, Hodges. Like I mean, there's room there for some fantasy production. I think. I mean, especially with how much they're down. So I think he'll actually put up some surprising numbers.
Yeah, I think he's going to be really good, and I don't want to make this comparison because I don't think he's nearly as good as the player I'm about to put in the same sentence with him. But we saw what my goodness, his name just jumped out of my head. What's the Giants head coach? For the life of me, cannot remember.
Brian Daboll.
Brian Daboll. Colin always says that wrong. We saw what he was able to do with Josh Allen when they were able to get that big target for him and Stephon Diggs. And how, for those of you who may not remember, Josh Allen was talked about being a bust at that point for the Buffalo Bills before Stephon Diggs came over there. I don't know if this is going to make Daniel Jones like a massively better prospect, but when you have a player like Malik Neighbors who can do a lot in the offense, I think he's got that decent wingspan and everything, can catch the ball, could help Daniel. I mean, that wide receiver core was just piss poor last year. So, I mean, adding a guy like him who he can massively target, I think is going to help them out. So I think Daniel Jones could have a little bit of a bounce back as well, because he was heading into this year. I don't remember what he was in 2022, but I want to say he finished close to top 12 quarterback in fantasy. So, I mean, getting a guy like Malik Neighbors should help him out a lot.
Yeah, they still got Jalen Hyde in the roster, the wide receiver one, according to NFL last year. I'll never forget that. I have the next pick up here, and I actually take my favorite. I've been touting him for years. Corey's been trying to drag me down.
Get out of here.
JJ McCarthy. We just vibe together. We just both meditate and just link up like Bluetooth across the country.
How deep did JJ McCarthy get into your rankings at any point? Like, what was the lowest he ever had? Could you answer that?
Oh, I don't, but I'm sure it was like QB 20 something. Like, I'm sure he was that deep.
Oh, deeper than that. Don't lie to me.
I don't doubt it. Look, I still don't really believe in him. I just believe in the coaching staff. I love Kevin O'Connell. I love what he brings to the team. Obviously, he has J.J. McCarthy and Jordan Addison to throw to, and Hawkinson when he comes back healthy. Don't expect him healthy right away. But this is dynasty. We're talking long-term here. Like, he's got all the weapons, and he's got a great offensive line too. Like, the Vikings are a complete team. So it's really kind of like he's got training wheels here. I just need him to hit like the minimum thresholds. And then, if you have a league that has like points per handoff, like that's a really good safety blanket. I don't know a better quarterback at handing off the ball than J.J. McCarthy in this class.
Well, I mean, the only thing I'll say about that is like I guess we got Aaron Jones this year, but our running game was really bad last year. So I don't know if that can take a step forward now that we bring Aaron Jones in a little bit. And even our defense. One of the things I always said about J.J. McCarthy coming into the league was if you were going to ask him to start from day one, you better be surrounded with a pretty good team, because that was kind of like what he was at Michigan. Just be good when you're called upon, and otherwise, just don't break us. So, like, if he's coming to this team now, is a lot going to be put on his shoulders to be delivering and carrying the offense, where if we don't have a strong running game and we don't have a defense to keep teams at bay, like, are you going to be the guy we're going to be calling upon constantly to deliver that? That worries me a little bit. I'm not going to lie. That worries me a little bit. I'm just hoping that the Vikings defense takes a step forward, and then we got Dallas Turner in the first round as well. Hopefully he can provide a little bit of a presence off the edge without Danielle Hunter. So some of that does worry me about this situation, but being with KOC, seeing what he did with the quarterbacks last year that they brought in, made Josh Dobbs a winner, made Nick Mullins very productive. Like, I mean, he finds ways to get the best out of these quarterbacks and maximize their potential. Let's just hope he'll do that with JJ McCarthy again.
I do want to say this before you throw it over to Matt. We talk about projecting success. It's in the intro of our show, obviously. And I don't really like the skill set McCarthy has, but there's only I really thought about it. There's two coaches that I believe in developing quarterbacks in the league right now that are open for business. And it was Brian Daboll, who didn't get one, and then Kevin O'Connell. That's it. If JJ went anywhere else, I don't think I'd be taking him at the 106.
I mean, that's fair. I'm still hesitant. I want to see it because, I mean, you can tell me right now, who did KOC develop as a quarterback?
Well, I wouldn't say he developed. Hasn't really been a developer, I guess. But just all I would really say is what we have from last year, which is what he did with guys gave Kirk Cousins probably the best play of his year throughout the first half of the season. Brought in Josh Dobbs. and played him to his potential until like the rest of the league figured out what he could do with him. And then he had to move on to Nick Mullins, made him like, I would say some of that stuff does point to him at least being able to adapt to his quarterbacks, being able to find their strengths and whatever. So I'm kind of excited about that matchup, but I will agree that is kind of a small sample.
That's what I'm afraid of, because like Josh Dobbs has had some pretty good moments in his career, and it's what you just said right there. Though he developed him to what he could until the league figured him out. Yeah, I feel like the league can figure out JJ McCarthy, because I still think there's a lot that he lacks. Now I do think it helps having JJ, Jordan Addison, Hawkinson. I mean, that's a legitimate group of weapons. I think you could argue possibly the best receiving group in all of the NFL.
Even Jones out of the backfield as well. A very good receiver.
Aaron Jones, extremely good receiver. So like he's got the weapons. And I do think actually what Cory said is probably what is going to help JJ, but I think hurt him in fantasy is like, I think that they're bringing him in to manage the game, because that's what he is. Like, I think most fantasy dynasty people in fantasy who saw the NFL draft and don't really know JJ McCarthy think he's some big playmaker, uses his legs and all that. We know that's not who he is. So like, I think he is a game manager. I think at best you're looking at like I think QB 15 is at best what you're looking at like fantasy wise, because you're going to be counting on Justin Jefferson and the weapons to get him the points. Because I don't think he's not going to be a volume passer. I don't think he's bringing you any rushing yards. Obviously, I know you're joking about the handoff thing. Now, if it was a point per handoff league, like we're talking about JJ top 5. So like, I don't think it's a bad pick, because, we talk about the value in quarterbacks and how much that is, but like, I just don't see a massive fantasy upside for JJ.
I think the hope would be that there would be growth at the next level, because I do agree coming in, I think that's kind of my expectations for him as well, is to be more of a manager. I just hope there's growth more at the next level, that he can be unlocked a little bit that maybe he wasn't able to really unlock over at Michigan.
I mean, we saw what Nico Collins was able to do once he got away from Jim Harbaugh. So maybe.
Yeah.
I'm actually about to have the quarterback rankings pulled up in front of me, but like, I would trade this pick for like Trevor Lawrence. Like, I feel like the community is really down on Trevor Lawrence.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Ooh, you don't know about that? I'm trying to pick like back end like QB1s. Jordan Love.
I would take Jordan Love because of the rushing upside. I think Love was an okay NFL quarterback last year, but he was a really good fantasy asset. And the Packers I don't think are going to move on. Not from the way they talk about him. They seem to love him.
Okay, actually, I'm on Keep Trade Cut. Here's the guys in front and behind him: Dak Prescott or Jared Goff. Would you rather one of those two over JJ McCarthy?
Oh man, I think I would take Jared Goff. Dak scares me. He's on the last year of his contract. It doesn't sound like Dallas wants to bring him back. I think a lot of his value this last year was the volume passing. So like, I would take Goff. Dak I'd probably do, but that's
okay. JJ is slotted right now, QB 18. Like 20 is Bryce Young, 21 is Baker, 22 is Bo Nix. We'll talk about him later, maybe.
No. He's right at the end of like your startable, the guys you feel good about starting.
Yeah,
like, really.
I would have taken him over all those. I mean, Baker, if you're on a win now team, I take. Baker was actually top 10 fantasy quarterback last year. So like, if you're on a win now, I'd do it. Outside of that, I would take JJ over all those guys.
I do think we're underselling possibly his potential with his legs as well. Because even if you remember his freshman season, he ran around a lot more too. I wonder if that'll be something he relies on early on. And we might get a little more points from that, because we do know that at least that he does have some legs under him, like been clocked at like over 20 miles per hour. Like I think that might be more of an asset at the next level. Like let's just see. It's definitely not something Michigan asked them to do very much.
Matt, get us back on track with the 107 here.
So I'm taking Rome Odunze. I think, with Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison gone, obviously going to a very good situation. I think he's going to be the starter. I've seen some reports that he might be in the slot. I actually think he's going to be on the outside. I mean, for those who may not remember, Keenan Allen started most of his career for the Chargers in the slot at times. I think he could go into the slot and it be DJ Moore and Rome Odunze on the outside. And why that matters is they brought in, and I can't remember his first, I think Shane Waldron, who was Seattle's offensive coordinator, who actually was the reason that Geno Smith had that great season where all of a sudden he restored his value and became this guy that we all thought he was going to be. I mean, they ranked third in yards per touch last year, 4th in big plays rushing and deep passing. So, I mean, they were doing good. Now, granted, they had Tyler Lockett, and DK Metcalf, and some of that was also with them having Russell Wilson because he was there for 4 years. So I think, though, with that, you have a good passer, a player who can pass deep in Caleb Williams, Romo Dunze, if he is on the outside with DJ Moore, and then Keenan Allen in the slot. I mean, defenses have to pick who they're going after. So I do think Romo Dunze is going to be able to go out and get his every once in a while. I do not think he's going to be a wide receiver 1 for fantasy because that offense is just too low. They also brought in DeAndre Swift in the backfield as well, and Caleb will get some rushing as well. So I think you're looking at probably more of like a middle tier wide receiver 2, but I think he'll be consistent every single week, being that rookie, and him and Caleb are going to grow together. Keenan Allen probably gone after this year. We'll see what they do with DJ Moore. So I think there's room for him to grow into the future. These first couple years, he's probably like a middle wide receiver 2 asset.
Do you think he overtakes DJ Moore, like as a target share, like his perspective? That's the question. And do you think he's the one, like the 2, or do you think he's like a 2, like a 1B, or what?
I think he's the 2. Mm-hmm. And I would not be surprised if he ends up being the 3, because I do not look. Keenan Allen, in my opinion, is the best route runner in the NFL still to this day.
He's only got 1 year left, though. I understand. Leave him out.
But he's still like he creates separation everywhere on the field. And I think as a rookie, Caleb will be looking for that. DJ Moore is also an incredible route runner as well. I think that's where Romo Dunze lacks behind the 2 of them. So I could see both those guys creating that separation and getting open, and Caleb just going to them, because Caleb will do it because he believes in his arm. So I think he will force throws into Romo Dunze. But if they call the offense a certain way, I still think because of the way those 2 guys create separation, there's a chance that both of them actually out-target Rome just this year. I still think he's the better bet long-term, but this year I could see him kind of being lower end.
I thought Caleb struggled to throw the 50-50 ball. Like, as in struggle, as in like he wasn't willing to. Like, that's why he always extended the play for so long, was to give his guys longer time to actually get open. So I think he'll pair up really well with DJ Moore and Keenan, but Keenan's only there for a year, and we're talking about Dynasty year. But so I don't think Odunze is going to be bad. I just think, like, I'm looking at like rankings, and I'm like, maybe the community's getting a little bit ahead of themselves. Like, he's currently right now like wide receiver 16 in Dynasty. Like, I don't know about that. Maybe like 24, 25, but.
I think a lot of it is going to be reliant on what exactly happens with Keenan Allen going forward. Like, if Keenan Allen has a big year, like, do they try to re-sign him cheap or something like that? Like, if he becomes Caleb's favorite target, like this guy to the slot, like if he becomes like the leading receiver for Chicago, do they bring him back this year? I think that's really the main question. I think right now I would anticipate that Keenan Allen probably moves on next year. That's kind of why they put the investment into Romo Dunze right now, and he becomes the number 2. And I think that's something you can buy into right now and not really worry about going forward. I still think he's the better bet right now, and eventually he'll be the guy. You might get slow starts. He might be more of a first off the bench into your lineup type player when somebody's down or somebody has a bye week, that kind of player for the first year, maybe even a little bit into the second year. But I have a feeling he'll be a starter sooner than later. I'll keep it moving.
Keenan to the Patriots.
I'll keep it moving right to 108. And this is, this might kind of be value drafting here as well. And with the tight end premium, I am going with Brock Bowers. A guy that we've been talking about for years, has an amazing freshman season with Georgia and has been used like, not even tight end usage, man. You could almost say like Brock Bowers has been like the Debo of Georgia's offense for like years. The way they give him short touches, the way they've even given him rushes out of the backfield, around the goal line, and the way he's even used downfield as a downfield threat on the outside, out of the slot. Like, there's so much this guy can do that, to me, even ending up somewhere like the Raiders, where they didn't seem to use the tight end much, and not much targets outside of Devontae Adams. They have Jacoby Myers there as well, who had a decent year. But I just think Brock Bowers is so dynamic and everything that they can do. When you put this kind of investment in him, I think they're going to find ways to be creative with him. And it won't always be as an inline tight end. You can put Michael Mayer in line, and you can still have Bowers in the slot. You can have Bowers outside. He can essentially be that other outside wide receiver for you. I think he'll see a lot more usage like that. And I'm not too worried about it. I wouldn't have been worried really anywhere he ended up. I think he's that dynamic of a player that he'll make an impact regardless of where he would have been. So 108, tight end premium here, Bowers seems like the pick.
So you're trusting tight ends?
I'm trusting tight ends. I don't know. I think Brock Bowers is a really interesting case because I think he's very versatile. So one of the comparisons that we've often gone with too is like an Evan Ingram type, and we saw even how Jacksonville used Evan Ingram last year. Got like a boatload of targets, and he like lead that team in targets or something, like over 120 or something like that. It was something absolutely ridiculous.
He didn't lean. I don't think he led it, but yeah, the target share was up there. Like it was over 120. I don't think he like led it, but he was up there.
Regardless, like that's the kind of usage that I could see Bowers really exceeding with, and I think there's room here to do that. So I'm buying into him at this price. I think near the end of your first round, the first tight end off the board, a top 15 pick in the NFL. I think this is a good value pick for him.
You like have to pick him here, but I'm just like, I know that means you don't like tight ends. I still don't feel good about it. Like I feel like you have to do it, but like I still like I hate it. I hate it. That picture of Brock next to like Gronkowski, for example. It's like a little kid.
They're gonna hang that in the Hall of Fame once he becomes a Hall of Fame player.
But like Gronk's like the tight ends we grew up watching, and now we have this like new age tight ends, and it's like, how do I value this? Like, how do I value this? And I'm like scarred by like Kyle Pitts being misused. Like Las Vegas doesn't even have a really good quarterback at all at the helm. So I don't like you had to take him, but like I'm like if he flops, I'm gonna be like, yeah, of course he flopped. And short, like it could have been, I could have seen it a mile away. Like I feel like I don't know. I don't have like the strongest confidence in Brock Bowers.
I think our expectation level for tight ends has risen too because of what some classes have provided us recently. But I mean, even after this year, if he didn't do it, I still think he would hold value going into next year with that kind of capital. Now, Michael Mayer on the other end, he's dead, so you guys can.
He's gonna be great blocking out there. He's gonna be great at blocking.
The one positive upside I will give for the pick here is they did bring in Luke Getsy to be their offensive coordinator, who we've been talking, or not, maybe not us specifically, but many people have been talking about the supposed breakout of Cole Kmet, which finally came last year with the Chicago Bears, where he had the 90 targets, was second in receiving behind DJ Moore on that team. So he comes over there. I think Brock Bowers, you could argue, is probably the second best receiving player on the Raiders roster right now. So he might get that kind of a target share. He also did that in Green Bay as well when he was the offensive coordinator in 2021, 2022. Robert Tonyan was having that great year with him. I think Mercedes Lewis had a couple, or at least a couple good games. And it's like he does go to the tight end. And none of those, including Cole Kmet, are as athletic, or I think is offensively gifted as Brock Bowers is. So I think that is the one upside you could sell for Brock Bowers possibly being. I mean, I don't think he goes top 3, but again, it's not hard to even finish his top 8 fantasy tight end. Like it's so mixed. So if you get a guy who's targeted heavily, like I think he has a chance to be, it's a great pick right there because you're winning that position most weeks then, unless you're going up against Kelsey, Kittle, Hawkinson, or Laporta.
Yeah, Trey McBride too, but yeah,
sure, yeah.
I can argue in those points here. At the 109, I take Xavier Worthy, who in my home league draft, I didn't have the pick, but I was trading up, and I'm gonna ask this question too about like debating Worthy or Rome Odunze, because we kind of picked apart Odunze's future, like saying can he ever be a DJ Moore? Does he potentially be the 1 there? Matt's saying he might be the 3. Like Worthy's got like what? Rasheed Rice is currently in jail, right? Or facing jail time, or however you want to look at it. He's got some law issues. And then it's like Marquise Brown, who kind of hasn't come through now for 5 years in a row. He's on a 1-year deal anyway. And the Chiefs have been hunting for this long-term field stretcher on their roster. I mean, they got Marvin Harrison Jr., they've added like Mecole Hardman. They've now got Marquise Brown. Like they've been hunting for a elite field stretcher. And they can have Kelsey and Rasheed Rice operate in the intermediate and the shallow areas of the field. Of course, Kelsey's also getting old. He signed a 2-year extension, but like I feel like that's really a 1-year contract. And the second year is like you can retire and here's all the money. Like thank you for your time. So I don't know. Like, I'm sitting here like Worthy's upside I could see being much higher than Rome Odunze's, and I don't know. I didn't have the pick. I didn't successfully trade up for the pick in my home league, but I really thought about getting Worthy in my home league over Odunze.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're maybe chasing the narrative too a little bit with Xavier Worthy and the speed.
I'm part of the problem.
And the Tyreek Hill, and then they're constantly chasing this like smaller type player, right? Like with the Mecole Hardman, with the Kadarius Toney, with drafting Tyreek Hill in the first place, now going to Xavier Worthy. Like they're constantly chasing this like speed. It's like they're trying to replicate again what Tyreek Hill brought to this team. And I will say, like I love Xavier Worthy as a player. I think he's more dynamic than he was even used at Texas. I think he has more, but I guess like you have to wonder if the NFL will pigeonhole him. Like I remember an interesting conversation you had in our chat the other day, this morning, actually, I think, was when you were saying that Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy aren't deployed in like the same way. And like, what did you mean by that exactly? Are you saying that Xavier Worthy was more dynamic, or are you saying that Marquise Brown was more dynamic?
Oh, Worthy, but I think Brown's just a stretch slot. I think Worthy offers a little bit more. And I've been saying this a lot in the offseason too, that I think Worthy can actually be like a very high level like route runner and operate more like in more areas of the field, at least than Marquise Brown. But as a pre-draft process, like I thought he could operate in all levels of the field. He just wasn't used that way because Texas had like an embarrassment of riches at talent at pass catcher.
See, I'll say, like, with Marquise Brown, this is what I'm worried about, that the NFL will pigeonhole him because of his size and because of his speed and stuff, that they'll want to use him in that type of role early anyways, because Marquise Brown in college was used very dynamically. Like, you look at this guy's, like, target share in his college years, it's like 22% short, 22% medium, 22% semi-deep, 20% deep. Like, he was all over the field. And then when he got put in the NFL, he was still typecasted, pigeonholed into a stretch player. And like, I just worry that they're still going to do that with Xavier Worthy. Now, the one good thing you have here going is that KC has had, experience with these smaller type players and used Tyreek Hill in a lot of different ways. That's kind of the hope here, I think, with Xavier Worthy. But I do think there is still that downside there too, where, maybe he is going to be pigeonholed somewhat like that. But I do think there's a little bit more to what he can do than when he's actually shown over at Texas.
Yeah, I mean, we all know I'm a hater of Xavier Worthy, so I personally would not do that. I mean, Rashee Rice ended up with a decent amount of targets last year, but a lot of that came toward the end of the season when he was getting targeted a ton.
Crazy manufactured stuff too.
Exactly. Outside of that, they don't really target anyone else outside of Travis Kelce.
That's because they don't have anyone good.
I don't disagree with you, but like if you go back through over the past couple of years after they traded Tyreek Hill, which again, maybe that's what they're trying to replicate here, they're not going to these guys deep. And if that's what Xavier Worthy ends up being, he's going to end up only getting 30 to 50 targets. And that's what those deep guys got. Like the last one that got a decent amount outside of Rashee Rice was Juju Smith-Schuster, who got 101. Juju Smith-Schuster wouldn't be used as a deep threat either. If you're talking about just the deep threats. Now, I agree with Mike. I don't think that is all Xavier Worthy is, but that is where he excels. And my biggest issue with him is, again, even when he runs some very crisp routes, even if he runs these routes and gets open deep and Patrick Mahomes lays it on him, we're going to see MVS all over again, and he's just going to bottle it, as the British say when you mess up a pass and you don't get a goal. Whatever. He drops like he's poor ball tracking, poor hands. Mike made a joke earlier today, and I did see that on Twitter, actually. PFF was looking for another analyst because they had to fire the guy who was tracking Xavier Worthy's drops because they weren't counting him correctly. Like, I just think there's a lot that he has to clean up for a wide receiver that is that talented. Like, I do think he has a chance to be extremely talented, but Rome Odunze, I think, brings more to the wide receiver game nuance-wise than Xavier Worthy does, and I am worried about him going to that offense, and people are going to buy so heavily into being he's a first-round pick, faster than John Ross, all this stuff. But I don't have the list in front of me, but I really think if you go back through and look at the list of the fastest wide receivers at the combine and everything,
it wasn't good.
None of them have panned out in the NFL.
One of them was okay, but yes, they all kind of suck. Yeah.
And my big thing with all of them is here. So there's a double-sided coin here. I'll speak out of both sides of my mouth. Xavier Worthy, I think, is better as a route runner than most of those guys on that list. A lot of those guys were just track, like Olympic speed players who use their athleticism to win in college. But where he matches up with all them is poor hands. And that is, again, my biggest fear for him as a wide receiver. So I personally would take Rome. I don't have an issue if you want to take Xavier Worthy because I'll just take the better player falling to me later in the draft.
Drops mean longer drives and closer games for more deep balls later on. I'm just saying.
You say that, but every time MVS dropped a ball for the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes wouldn't go back to him for he wouldn't. Like that's my.
Sometimes the whole game he wouldn't go back to.
Yeah.
And Kadarius Toney was dropping balls too. Maybe he's just used to it. Maybe he's just like, fuck it, like this is my life now.
Yeah. It's gonna Next Ted Ginn Jr. Right? No.
Yeah.
All right. No, I won't put that out there. Matt, why don't you give us 110?
So I went with Trey Benson. He's currently my RB1 now. Pretty close between him and Jonathan Brooks, but I mean the landing spot is just incredible. I mean, last year it was James Conner and Amari DiMercado, who I forgot was even in the league. I mean, Keontae Ingram, Michael Carter were there, didn't really get any run. I think Connor will still obviously be the main running back this year, but he is out of contract. I don't think they will re-sign him. And I honestly think Trey Benson is better in all aspects of the running back game than James Conner, outside of maybe the physicality. But that team looks like they're improving. Arizona doesn't have the best offensive line, which does worry me a little bit about Trey Benson. I think he dances behind the line a little bit too much at times. But when you have a quarterback like Kyler Murray, who's going to cause the defenses to be scared, now you have Marvin Harrison Jr. on the outside. So I don't think that they can just come in and stack the boxes because they don't want one-on-one with Marvin Harrison Jr. I think all this will help Trey Benson. And I just think the volume that he will get, again, it's 1 year with Shane Steichen. So we can't Jonathan Gannon. That's Jonathan Gannon. So we can't read too much into that, but what he did with the Eagles and kind of that 1 year giving all that run to them, and then last year with James Conner, like I do think Trey Benson is one of those guys who could get an actual workhorse workload for his team, and so I would take him here at 110, knowing you're probably not getting a lot out of him as a rookie.
And James Conner has had his. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
I think you're underselling a little bit as a rookie because Connor's like old and like kind of gets banged up too. Like he's like 28, 29, which is old for running backs. But no, I kind of echo everything you said. I think he's the 101, not 101, excuse me, the RB1. And I do like, I didn't like his vision. I thought he kept looking for the big play threat for FSU last year. We didn't see that like his junior year, but his senior year, he was always looking for like the big play and missing the short area comeback lanes. That's just a mentality switch. I think they can be coached out of him. And I do think Kyler is a little bit underrated as quarterback, and same with like Arizona. Like I'm not saying Kyler is like superb, like top 5 quarterback, but like he's good enough not to like go anywhere. And like this offense is going to put up points. Like they're going to put up points. You have goal line touches. Like this should be. I think Benson's a clear RB1 here.
Yeah, I'm in with you in agreement with that. I mean, he's been my RB1 through most of this process, regardless. And I do think that maybe he was looking for the big play a lot too. But I mean, he just got used to it the last year because he was ripping him off like crazy the year before and evading so many tackles. I mean, he broke like PFF's missed tackles for us. And I think he might have just got in his head a little bit and thought he could do more than, he was actually able to do on the field, and just needs to tighten it up a little bit. Kind of like how David Montgomery on the next level had to tighten it up and not dance around so much and just get downhill a little bit quicker. That might be a path for Trey Benson a little bit, Ben. And we saw the receiving usage with Connor as well. That could be something, and Trey Benson can catch as well. I think that's a plus in his game as well. And James Conner's old. I mean, I think he's a very good player, but he's old. I think we might see a little bit more Trey Benson, or at least like a 4-game stretch or something where Connor's out that we can get really excited. But I'll head over to 111 here, going with the Jacksonville wide receiver, Brian Thomas Jr., drafted at, I believe, number 23, which was the Vikings' original pick. Not sure how it ended up in their hands, but regardless, I think that's where he got drafted. And me and Mike have talked about it a lot with Brian Thomas Jr. We don't think he's a perfect prospect right now. We don't think he's a fully developed prospect. He's basically a very singular note player. It's all like vertical routes, and it's all winning at the catch point. And, and it's all like linear things. It's all like comeback routes and very slight posts and stuff like that. There's more to his route development than needs to come. He's not a very deceptive route runner either. There's not a lot of footwork at the line as well. I think there's a lot of work he has to do, but crazy upside with this guy, right? Like super fast, tall, and he has that ability, almost Rome Dunze-esque at the catch point where he just, Martavis Bryant-esque, that we see him make all those crazy catches, in the end zone and stuff like that. Like that's the kind of stuff that Brian Thomas can do. So he's going to be able to rely on that early, which I think Jacksonville needs. They don't really have a wide receiver there. I mean, Calvin Ridley was up and down. He's gone now. They got rid of Zay Jones. They still have Christian Kirk there, who's going to operate the slot really well. So that Evan Ingram there, who we talked about before, he's going to be running in intermediate routes in the middle of the field. And this is the guy that they're really going to attack deep. Now, I could see like some like DJ Chark type usage early on. I just think that with his type of upside, we're hoping that it can grow further than that. Now, 111 here, I'm willing to take that shot and hope that he can grow into more of a player than DJ Chark ever did.
Yeah, I'm a pessimistic viewer, so I got to raise all the red flags too. I was looking more at Brian Thomas. Like all his big games came against poor secondaries, like Florida State. Their DB1 who did get drafted at the 3rd round was in coverage against Malik Neighbors, and his like 75-yard catch came in like garbage time, 4th quarter. FSU didn't care. They were going to win the game no matter what. But it was like Ole Miss 120, Arkansas 130, Florida 150, and then like Georgia State like 103. But like against Auburn, 7 yards. Alabama, like 30. Let me see this. Oh, I lost it. Auburn 7, Alabama 36, Texas A&M 58, Mississippi State 60. All teams had like corners get. I don't know. It seems like he got shut down when they played against good secondaries. But besides that, like, yeah, Cory kind of nailed it. He's boomer bust. He only runs a couple routes. There's no real competition on the roster though from to fill that role for Jacksonville. And I'm a big believer in T-Law. Like I really am. I still am. So DJ Chark is definitely a possibility here.
I mean, Trevor Lawrence sucks, so I'm worried about what Brian Thomas will do this year. But I agree with everything else said here.
All right, Mike, hit us. 112.
The 112. I forgot who I'm taking. I remember who I'm taking now. I'm taking Jonathan Brooks, running back over here for Carolina. I usually don't. Well, actually, I have been the whole time and still don't recommend drafting running backs with a torn ACL coming fresh off it. I think Barnabas posted in our Slack. I don't have the right names in front of me, but it was the staff that did OBJ's ACL and a bunch of other players that came back ahead of schedule and came back looking pretty good. So I'm kind of a believer in that his operation will be fine. And typically, I joke and I always tell everyone, hey, everybody gets one free ACL now. Everybody gets one free ACL. So I think Brooks will be fine as long as he gets a little bit into training camp before the season starts, because I want him to get him acclimated up to that play strength and game speed that the NFL has. And then Carolina's got no one there. I mean, it's Chuba Hubbard is the most mediocre product out there. And then Miles Sanders, I think he died last year. So it's official. So there's no one here to take away from him. I don't really know if I believe in this offensive line. I certainly don't believe in the pass catchers, even after this NFL draft. So, but he is the RB1 for this. And just like Benson, I think Brooks could be in line as a true workhorse, the new definition of what a workhorse back is. But I think for me, and I'm going to ask you guys this too, there's a clear top two running backs in this draft, and it's these two guys. This is the tier break for running backs. That's it.
Yeah, I don't even honestly know if I can see myself taking Jonathan Brooks. I'll be the guy drinking the haterade a little bit. I've said it all year long. I don't know that I think Jonathan Brooks is really elite at any one thing or any even in the open field. I don't think he's that dynamic in the open field. I think he's more a slippery than elusive type guy. Me and Barnabas talked about on our draft coverage, very thin lower half. I wonder how his power is going to translate to the next level. He's a good all-around player, very good all-around player. I just wonder what he stands out in. And I'm just worried. I mean, health is a big thing for me this year. If he can come in and make an impact early, which I worry about with the two other capable backs there as well, then maybe he can hold himself a role. But then I worry if he doesn't come in strong, is injured, the running back room suffers again, doesn't really get a lot of playing time this year. Can he be good enough to hold the job where Carolina's going to go, okay, we got Jonathan Brooks. That's fine. We don't have to go out and get anybody else. I worry they'll bring in somebody else. Go target another free agent running back. Go target something. There's more skepticism with Jonathan Brooks from me than I think most people right now.
I mean, I think that he and Benson should be in the same tier, but I am a little bit worried about him as well. The room I'm not as worried about, Miles Sanders, Chuba Hubbard, whatever. Miles Sanders is definitely on his last leg. It's more of if you go back in and look at, and I don't know how to say his last name. I think it's Brad Izzich. I don't know how to say it, but the offensive coordinator for Carolina. If you go back through his history, he has not produced very many good running back fantasy players or running back games. It's all been passing. He goes back to Seattle when we used to know Seattle's this ground and pound run game with great defense. The past couple of years where they've had bad, Kenneth Walker, I think, had an okay season, did deal with injuries, but that was it. But he also was in Tampa Bay where all of a sudden Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are going off, but they're not really doing anything in the running game. Now that they brought in Xavier Legette, who I don't think is necessarily that good, but I do think that they're going to lean heavily toward the pass because that is what his offenses have typically done, which I then don't think helps Jonathan Brooks at all either. So I do kind of agree with Cory. I don't think he has that one calling card that you can kind of rest your laurels on. So I think he's probably more often than not a low end RB2 for fantasy.
Yep, and just I gotta agree with Cory. I like my running backs with that cake. I don't want no cupcakes, some bite-sized thing. I want to have multiple bites out of that thing. I want some cake. Mm-hmm. And maybe you can hang out with Xavier Legette because that dude's got some cake to share. So let's recap the first round here. At the 101, quarterback Caleb Williams going to Chicago. At the 102, Jaden Daniels, quarterback, going to Washington. The 103, we got Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver, going to Arizona. At the 104, we got Drake May, quarterback, going to New England. The 105, we have Malik Neighbors, wide receiver, going to the Giants. At the 106, we got J.J. McCarthy, quarterback, going to Minnesota. The 107, we got Romeo Dunze, wide receiver, going to Chicago. At the 108, we have Brock Bowers, tight end, going to Las Vegas. The 109, we have wide receiver Xavier Worthy, going to the Kansas City Chiefs. At the 110, we have Trey Benson, running back, going to Arizona. At the 111, we have Brian Thomas, wide receiver, going to Jacksonville. And at the 112, we have running back Jonathan Brooks, going to Carolina. Before we get into the second round, I got to ask you guys, I'm going to start off with Matthew here. Is there a tier break? Like, is there a clear-cut, like, top group to you? Is there a tier break?
Hit me with the Matthew like I got in trouble. I'd probably say at 1-8 for me in Brock Bowers, but I would not have JJ McCarthy up in that top tier. He'd be below Bowers. I think like that next tier, McCarthy, Worthy, Benson, Brian, Thomas, like those guys drop down a tier, be those top guys for me. So move Bowers up a couple spots with the Dunze. That's it.
Interesting. Okay, Cory?
I think I would agree with him. I think I'm actually fine, except I would include JJ McCarthy. I think our top 8 is actually like right where the tier break would be from, right where Xavier Worthy kicks in, and then your running backs, and then some of these more risky wide receivers, or more projection wide receivers. I think that's where the tier breaks for me.
I would put the tier break after the 108, but I'd be kicking Brock Bowers out and putting Worthy in.
I can't
trust tight
on
ends.
brand. That's on brand.
Yeah. 201. Matt, I'm sorry for calling you Matthew. I think I was just thinking about how Felix calls you Matthew all the time.
Yeah, that's because he hates me. I'll take it. Speaking of Felix Sharp, I will take his boy Ladd McConkey here. I don't feel great taking him here, but what I do like about the landing spot here with the Chargers, they bring in Greg Roman, who has shown that like he just gets slot wide receivers and tight ends the ball a ton in his offense. And I also think that helps with his quarterback and Justin Herbert, who is that see it throw it quarterback who, if you create that separation, he will get you the ball. And Ladd McConkey creates separation everywhere in the route. I think we say he's going to play the slot, and we worry slot wide receivers. You've got to get the volume. I think there's a good chance that he will get decent volume. I don't think he will ever be a wide receiver 1, but I would not be surprised if you're looking at a guy who's just like consistently in that wide receiver 18 to 24 range every single year. Just you lock him into your wide receiver 2 or flex spot every week and just go to whatever else you need to go do. So I think he's a locked in starter for you on your fantasy side of things. It should be pretty good.
Yeah, I don't like Greg Roman offenses, but there's such a talent gap between Ladd McConkey and the next guy up. Like if it's low volume, I don't care. It's all going to go to him anyway.
QJ, man. QJ's going to break out this year. Man.
No, dude, no. I will never forget.
My league mates listen to this. QJ is going to break out this year. Also on the block, by the way.
Yeah, on the block. Any second. Future second. Any future second, please. Yeah, I think there's just such a talent gap here. Like if they build out this room in the future, I'm nervous, but for now, I'm not. So I like this pick. 201, like it.
Yeah, fine for me. Not much to add on to there. I think he is more well suited for the slot. Some people think he can play outside. I think he lacks a little bit of physicality there, but I think the slot is what you want here, anyways. I mean, we saw what Keenan Allen was able to do with Herbert. Herbert likes targeting that slot position, and hopefully that carries over to the next offense as well, where he kind of just favors targeting that position. But at 202, I'm going to head to my next pick, and a guy that I thought that I wouldn't really be picking at 202, but here I am at 202, Superflex League, taking Mr. Bo Nix, heading over to Denver. Top 12 pick, and I am super surprised I ended up as a top 12 pick. This is what I will say about Bo Nix. We know about him. Bubble screen Bo, went to Oregon, found an offense that worked for him, but it was a very short distance offense. A lot of predicated on a lot of yak by their receivers. I mean, Troy Franklin and Tez Johnson were like top 10 in yak this year for Power 5 wide receivers. He had the lowest ADOT in like the entire country. 65% of his passes over the last 2 years, under 9 yards. I mean, just very shallow stuff. But I will just say, the one thing I always said was, if you can get to a guy like with Sean Payton, which he did here, and I wonder if that's maybe what he found, but we saw what Sean Payton did with Drew Brees when his arm was kind of shot, and he had very low ADOT offense with Joe Lombardi there, where he broke the accuracy record with the Saints. Like, he kind of figured out how to use him there, and it kind of maybe makes me see a way that Bo Nix could also work over here with Denver. And I mean, they have some decent weapons here, nothing really great. You know what I mean? Like, Sutton is at least decent. Then they bring in Troy Franklin, who we can talk about a little bit later. You still got Javonte Williams in the backfield. They bring in Audric Estime. Like, it's a decent team around him. I think they just got to figure out how to use him properly. I don't think that you want him to be crazy vertical targeting down the field, but I think I like the way he lines up with Sean Payton and how Sean Payton can kind of get the best out of him. So Bo Nix here at 202, and it's Superflex Leagues. This is value drafting at its finest as well.
I got to ask you guys, this is obviously a perfect fit for Sean Payton, and system QBs can work, a little bit harder to work, but they can work in the NFL. I got to ask you this. We know from recent history that just every QB doesn't transition well to the NFL. I'm going to be leaving Michael Penix out of discussion for obvious reasons. You got to pick someone to bust. Who's going to be out of the quarterbacks? Because
I know who Matt would say.
I bet you don't.
I bet you wouldn't say JJ McCarthy, or you say Jaden Daniels.
Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, that's who you'd say.
At
least for your investment too, like that's the bigger probably hit, right?
I think Bo Nix is like, I'm looking at Bo Nix. I'm like, do I think Bo Nix was a better prospect than Zach Wilson? Like, no, I don't. And like Zach Wilson, I'm not saying Zach Wilson's going to beat him out, but like I'm kind of like drawing a connection there where I'm like, I think Bo Nix has
Here's where I disagree. Bo Nix doesn't have the off-field issues that Zach Wilson did. That's where I think Zach Wilson got hurt more than anything else.
The Cougars are an off-field issue.
They are. They are.
I think
straight-laced, good guy.
I think the value conversation here, though, too, this is not as much as an investment. If you can get him in the second round, if he does fall, this is much. Like Jane Daniels is definitely like the riskier pick. I could see that from a sense, because he could be like another Jane Daniels or Justin Fields at the end of the day.
Yeah. But the reason it would be Jaden Daniels is because I still think there's a lot to clean up in his passing. Yeah. I think people are overlooking what he did because he won a Heisman. Like JJ, we talked about, I think he's a very safe bet because of the floor. Like I don't know that there's much of a ceiling, but his floor is safe as like that game manager. I can see JJ McCarthy still playing in the league in 10 years and just being like, again, a middle tier QB2 for fantasy, which is fine. Jaden Daniels, I could see out of the league in 5 years because he's not sliding or his passing's not there. Now I agree with what Cory said on the value. Like Bo Nix, if we're Felix Sharp victory lapping here. If you draft Bo Nix here at the second round, pick 2, and he goes out there and has 3 or 4 good games and you flip him for a first, you won. You won right there on that. So, I think it's a great spot to grab Bo Nix. I think he can succeed in that Sean Payton. Obviously, he's got the weapons around him. He's got a good offensive line. I think, again, for me, Zach Wilson, the talent was there. It was him not studying the playbook and him calling out teammates. So that's where he failed. That's where the team quit on him. I don't think Bo Nix is going to do that. It seemed like his teammates at Oregon, the coaching staff loved the kid. I think you be a good teammate. You go in there and you do what Sean Payton asked you to do. I think he could actually be pretty good in the NFL.
Yep. And he lost his girlfriend to a 6th-round pick. You can't be doing that, especially to one of your boys. You can't
I just can't believe we've gone from Bo Nix as the joke of the end of round in C2C draft pick, and now he's a top 12 quarterback in the NFL. I mean, just crazy. Good for him. Good for him.
You guys both mentioned value there. So before we go on to our next pick, I just want to ask you guys, do you think we should have taken Bo Nix earlier? And if so, how early do you think we should have taken him?
I think he could sneak into the last round, into the end of the first round, over Jonathan Brooks or over one of the running backs if people want to ignore that or whatever. But I think he could sneak in there for sure.
I think this is a fair spot for him. It reminds me a lot, again, not comparing him as the player, but it reminds me a lot of where Justin Herbert fell in his drafts. When that draft class came out, and again, I think obviously Justin Herbert massively more talented than Bo Nix, but I think this is a fair spot for him. The other quarterback who's taken much later, I think, is a little egregious, but we can talk about that.
All right. At the 203, I'm going to take Keon Coleman here, wide receiver going to Buffalo from Florida State. Look, we've mentioned so many times about how misused he was at FSU, but just getting down to it, he drops a lot of balls and he lost a lot of contested balls, and that was supposed to be his calling card. And now he goes to Buffalo. So I'm not believing in the player. I'm believing in the team's evaluation of him. They took him in the early second. He's an early declare wide receiver, which is always another good indicator too. I typically do like prototypical X's. And again, with those other indicators, I can kind of buy into it. Josh Allen's got a great deep ball. He's got a good, just a good arm on him. And there's not a lot of guys that can do what he does. They have Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel as the next 2 guys behind him. They don't offer the skill set that Keon has for this offense. So I'm taking him here, and I'm hoping he doesn't have a QJ opening to the season, which if it did happen, I could also kind of see that too. So I'm kind of more, I said all pre-draft process that this is so hard for me. And I'm going to believe in him. If the NFL believes in him, they took him at pick 33. They tell me they believe in him. So now I'm forcing myself to believe in him. This is an upside pick, and I am fully ready to take an L on it.
I actually don't think you will. I don't, again, not comparing the player. He's not Stephon Diggs, but I think they're bringing him in there to almost run that role. And if they use him down in the red zone, I actually think he can thrive. I mean, you mentioned, what happened with QJ. The difference was QJ also had Keenan Allen and Mike Williams on that roster. You just mentioned the roster behind Keon Coleman. Even if Keon Coleman goes out there beginning of the year and has a couple of drops, Josh Allen will still keep going to him. We saw Stephon Diggs have a bunch of drops last year in big moments for the Bills. Like, I think this is the perfect landing spot for Coleman, for a quarterback that will continue to trust him, was not afraid to fire in those 50-50 balls and let Keon Coleman go up and get it, which he can do. So I actually think you will not end up regretting this pick.
I have confidence that they'll use him better than the FSU did, but I think he's getting more of the Gabe Davis role than the Diggs. The Diggs didn't work deep that much compared to recent years too. Joe Brady's still there, right? Like Joe Brady's got to go. He's got to go.
Stephon Diggs went down the tank once Joe Brady took over. Yeah. I don't know why they did, but anyways, yeah, the things I will say with Keon, like I was even considering him around this area as well, and I was wondering if you guys were too. And this seems to be kind of like the area he's going, but I mean, I think it's a lot of it is due to the landing spot. Now, I will say in Keon Coleman's profile, like all contested targets are not equal sometimes, and this is what watching film. Sometimes you can break it down a little bit. Is Jordan Travis was just not a good quarterback for Keon Coleman, and like even if Keon Coleman went on his route, Travis would take so long to get outside the pocket and want to see him wide open that he would have to stop, work back towards him, kind of settle down. And it created a contested target when he's like sitting down. That's not the type of player. You shouldn't be coming back to the ball like that. You need somebody who can put it on the right spot, put it on the back shoulder, and maybe even hit him over the top if he wins early on in his route. We saw some pretty good testing from him, at least in jumps and some of the burst drills as well. I will say this. So the downside, you talked about QJ. I think the downside is maybe N'Keal Harry. That's what I'm worried about. I wonder if he's more like lack of separation, and that might not translate to the next level. But I'm a little bit more hopeful with the situation with the quarterback he's playing with as well, and at least his ability to create better targets for him than Jordan Travis did.
Keon's interviews are pretty goofy too. I highly recommend everybody go check those out. They're funny. Yeah. Matt, hit us with the 204.
I went with Ricky Pearsall here. I don't love the pick. I would have taken Coleman had you not taken him there. I'm just betting on Kyle Shanahan at this point. I mean, you guys talked about betting on KOC.
Kevin O'Connell.
See, I almost said it instead of saying KOC, and that probably wouldn't have come out right because of the yeah. They talked about trading Brandon Ayuk. They talked about trading Deebo Samuel. Like at some point, one of those guys is going to be gone. I don't think Christian McCaffrey is going to continue to get 83 targets every single year. He's kind of coming toward the downside of his career as well. I'm just betting on Ricky Pearsall being the guy for the 49ers in the next coming years. I think he can be used the way they use Ayuk or even possibly Deebo at times. So it's not quite the athletic, rusher that Deebo Samuel can be once the ball gets in his hand, but he can be moved all around the formation. Who knows if Brock Purdy will even be their quarterback? It's all strictly just betting on this offense of Kyle Shanahan at this point. Because I don't love any of the players available, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I love the skill set, and landing spot is a busy landing spot. I did look it up. Deebo's contract got another 4 years on. He's not a free agent until 2027. Ayuk is coming up on his final contract year, and this is a system that doesn't need ultra talented wide receivers like Ayuk is. And so I wonder if Ayuk's going to ask for what he's due, which he should, and if they're just going to tell him he can walk because they got Ricky Pearsall. I mean, that's what this draft pick should be signaling too. They have the future of the wide receiver core here. They invested a first into it. It's just busy, and I hate betting on you're betting on a player leaving. I feel like that's what you're betting on for him to get his workload in. But I feel like that's going to happen. He's a perfect stash pick.
Even with Deebo's contract, though, even I'm reading, there's a potential out right at the beginning of 2025 where they're only going to take $15 million dead cap on the year, and then that's it. Which isn't crazy nowadays in the NFL. People take that kind of hit all the time if they can afford it. I'm not exactly sure of their cap situation going into next year, but I mean it's not that big of a cap. That could be even something they want to trade away next year. Because he is going to be heading into his 29, I believe, age season in 2025, and he's had his injury issues as well. He's been on and off the field. I just wonder if Shanny might be getting a little bit tired with that, and this was kind of like a precursor to, I think Deebo's kind of headed down the back end of his career here with the way he's been playing in the lineup. And I do think that if you're going to pick one person to replace Ricky Pearsall's abilities kind of line up more with what Deebo Samuel does for this offense than what Brandon Ayuk does for this offense. So I think, in the long run, I think it'll be Ayuk that gets kept. I think Deebo eventually moves on. I think Ricky Pearsall's your number 2. And this is kind of a long play with it. You kind of get the Romo Odunze thing here again. But I think he will be someone that maybe comes out of value this draft that surprises us down the line. Okay, so now 205. I think would we all agree there at that 204 that felt like a teardrop there, like after Keon Coleman, or where would you guys say? Because it feels like right around here I was having trouble who I even wanted to pick around here.
I mean, I would say at 202 when you took Bo
Yeah,
Nix.
after Bo
I think-
Nix, yeah.
Yeah.
It felt like it dropped off here. So here I chased a profile that I didn't really love, but talking about a guy who has very good hands, very good speed, very good size, and that's Xavier Leggett, who surprisingly got first round capital at the end of first round, going over to Carolina, who just repeatedly took the same profile they took a shot on last year. And I'm not the same player. Jonathan Mingo isn't the same player, but just like the production wasn't always there. It's built more on traits, and that's kind of the same thing they did with Leggett. I will just say there was a little bit more athletic upside here. It feels like there was some really good hand moments for him as well. It's just so much raw ability for a fifth-year player that it's just like I feel like I'm more pessimistic than I am optimistic. But in the middle of the second round, getting a first-round wide receiver, I feel like that's a good value. Maybe that's the same thing he does with Ricky Pearsall here, and maybe even Xavier Leggett walks into Kelvin Benjamin's rookie season for a couple of seasons where he just wins on being bigger, faster than a lot of people, and then he eventually gets figured out down the line. Even if you get that, you can flip him somewhere down the line. At the middle of the second round, I'm willing to take that shot. So let's just see if Xavier Leggett can plan.
I think Mingo was a better prospect than Leggett.
Yeah,
and we saw how that played out. And I don't think Leggett's. I don't think Leggett's good at football. I'm sorry. I don't really care. I don't think his routes are good. He's just a bigger, better athlete, and he's a fifth-year guy, which also
good. You're underselling, I think, some of the stuff he does at the catch point, though. But I do agree everything else, like the stem of his route, a lot of the other stuff. Like
Bryce Young can get it there. Like I don't think I care. In my home league, which is a one quarterback league, he fell to the 207. This
is where he's been falling down.
It's so hard though because he's a first round pick. He's a first round pick. But let's say you want pick 40 overall, you can probably let him slide. But it's like
so looking though you don't have to give any names because we'll talk into him. Where would you have taken him in this round? Or would you have even taken him in this round? If it came down to it, where would you have taken him?
I probably would have been the late second. I probably would have taken him the 9, 10, 11, 12 area.
Okay. So after my pick at 208, you would have taken him?
Probably.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think it is just betting. You're betting on a little bit of draft capital here. You're betting on some athletic upside and just hoping that he can. Well, there is a lot of context to his story. It just matters how much weight you want to put on it. A guy who
none. Dude, it's not my fault you're going to touch the field. That's on you. Sorry.
No, I know, but I mean a guy that lost both his parents as well, a guy that suffered in a motorcycle accident as well, guy who came in relatively thin. They wanted to pack on weight. And you hear this guy talk, man. This guy's straight from the swamp of Bobby Boucher in The Waterboy. Yeah. He seriously sounds like that. You know what I mean? I think that there's a lot of learning he could do at the next level and a lot more growing he could do at the next level. I hope it comes together for him, but I am worried about it.
Matt, do you like this pick at 205? Is he really good? Do you think this is value, or do you are we saying he's gonna be a bust? And it's just a waste of pick. So we're just burning cash.
I mean, I think all these picks right now are kind of horrible. You're hoping for the best. The one thing I'll say about Leggett that's different than Pearsall is I do think he comes into Carolina and has a shot to actually produce. And was it Adam Thielen? Who else is on their roster? I was looking at
Deontay Johnson and superstar Jonathan Mingo.
So Deontay Johnson, I think, probably ends up leading there, although he was not good for Pittsburgh the last 2 years either, dealing a lot with drops as well. So there's a legitimate argument for Leggett over even Coleman, Pearsall, and probably not McConkey, but at least those other two wide receivers just went to possibly be the wide receiver one in that room. It gives Bryce Young a big target to throw the ball to. Maybe he replicates what he did in his 5th year in college last year. So I don't love it, but I also who else are you going to take at this point? There's not a lot of great picks left on the board.
Just give me Kelvin Benjamin's first 2 seasons in the NFL, and then I'll flip him. That's all.
There you go.
That's all I want.
Well, at the 206, I would rather take Roman Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
Which I have to scroll kind of far down to find, I guess. Maybe we should just type his name in.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know.
Best kept secret, I guess. Roman Wilson was a 3rd-round pick 80 overall to Pittsburgh, 16th pick in the 3rd round. He was one of the best players at the Senior Bowl, along with Ricky Pearsall. They were the 2 players that went home early, thinking that they showed enough. Ladd stayed a little bit longer, was a 1st-round pick, obviously. And Leggett was also there, too. And clearly, Leggett was not the same level player as those 3 were. Roman Wilson was not a year 1-0, a little bit quiet his 2 middle years, and then he was like the safety blanket option for JJ McCarthy. He's still one of the most efficient movers. Now he goes to Pittsburgh, which like their depth chart's thin now. It's just George Pickens, who only knows how to do contested catches. I think Roman could be like a slot like volume target, like a volume pig for Pittsburgh. And like I know we all joke, but like Pittsburgh knows how to scout wide receivers, and like I already believed in Roman Wilson before this. Now I believe in him again. Actually, like now that he got drafted there, and I know the analytical community and people that are like just kind of like dumb it down. Like it's dumb to say to take a 3rd round player over a 1st round player, but I really would take Roman Wilson over Xavier Legette, and I have done that actually in the home league drafts. That's what I did. Took Roman Wilson.
Hey, there's room to do that. I mean, there was people taking Amon-Ra St. Brown before a lot of those wide receivers, and they're looking pretty smart right now. I'm not saying he's Amon-Ra St. Brown.
That's me.
I'm just saying there is an argument for it as well. Just believe in your analysis, right? I mean, with Roman Wilson, one of the comparisons that I had kind of been running with this offseason is I think I see a little bit of Tyler Lockett in him. I don't know if I see exactly the same type of ability, like body control at the catch point, because he wasn't really afforded that many opportunities. But we saw some incredible things when he was with Russell Wilson. Tyler Lockett, just adjusting to the catch and ball tracking. Some of those things Roman Wilson I haven't seen, but a very efficient player, which is the same thing with Lockett. Wasn't always a crazy high volume player, but always efficient with his touches, has that big playability. And again, a lot of those over routes, a lot of those deep crosses and things like that. Not exactly all these vertical routes, which surprisingly with his speed, you didn't see a lot of vertical routes from Michigan with him. You saw a lot more of those using his speed across the field and stuff like that. So I think that's the upside for Roman Wilson. Now the downside still could be a lot lower than on that spectrum as well too. Just, a casually used depth player for all I know, just with his speed and stuff like that. But I am slightly optimistic about him in the same way that we talked about JJ McCarthy, some untapped potential there, because we really think that, Michigan kind of hampered down these offensive players a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, wide open room in Pittsburgh. I think your biggest concern right now is going to be, does what Russell Wilson does for him this year, if Justin Fields can maybe do something as a deep threat. We know Justin Fields can throw the deep ball. So, I don't think it's a bad pick. I wouldn't have an issue if someone were to take him over, the last 3 wide receivers that went off the board.
Yeah.
Okay. Wilson connection. The 207, Matt.
I mean, the fact that Michael Penix Jr. fell this far, I think, is a tad bit egregious. I get it.
I'm so ready to fight.
It was a horrible look. It was a horrible pick by Atlanta. But what if the Minnesota Vikings had traded up and taken him here? We wouldn't be saying that. But we all have questions about Michael Penix Jr. as a quarterback outside of Felix Sharp. Most of us have questions about Michael Penix as a quarterback. But here's the thing. He went ahead of Will Levis, who was going ahead of this in rookie drafts last year. Will Levis went into kind of the same situation and going in knowing he was going to be behind Ryan Tannehill, and some thought even, your favorite COVID quarterback, Malik Willis. Yet we saw Will Levis start last year, and in the first game went out there and went gangbusters. And all of those Will Levis lovers and supporters were all over Twitter. Got really quiet after that, but for that one game, we're really happy with what they saw out of Will Levis. And guess what a lot of people did at that point? They flipped Will Levis. Kirk Cousins is coming back from an Achilles tear. I understand that they say he's going to be back and healthy, but we don't know that he's going to be anywhere near what we saw in Minnesota. You guys earlier in this program were propping up KOC and what he was able to do for Kirk Cousins. What if we see crappy Washington? Well, now they're the Commanders. Before the Commanders, Washington Cousins, who did have some good years, but also struggled. And what if they decide, we're going to throw Michael Penix Jr. out there because Arthur Blank, rumors are, is the reason that this pick was made, and it wasn't Terry Fontenot, it was Arthur Blank. Arthur Blank wants to win. He's 80-something years old. He's the NFC South Jerry Jones. If all of a sudden they throw Michael Penix out there and he has 1 or 2 good games, because what does Michael Penix have? He's got weapons. He's got Drake London. He's got Kyle Pitts. He's got Bijan Robinson. You can turn around and do the same thing we just talked about Bo Nix earlier and flip him for a ton. I think he should have gone before this. Again, I don't love the situation. Honestly, don't even love the player. Do not think he was worth the first-round pick. But the NFL does. Those guys are getting paid millions and millions of dollars to make the decisions that they do. To get a quarterback here at 207, there's nothing but upside in this pick. Nothing but upside. Because we just made an argument that all these guys ahead of him are possible bust as well. This guy, because he's a quarterback, has more upside than any of the players that have gone before him. And I include Bo Nix in that because the team around him is better than what Bo Nix has in his team around him in Denver.
Okay. I don't care what the Madden playing people on Twitter say when they're like, you think you can do better than an NFL GM? The answer is yes. Yes, I can. And this is an example here. It's a pick 8 overall, Michael Penix, and you're playing the value game. What if he doesn't touch the field for 4 years? Like, you can't get a second. Like, if you bought it at the 207 right now, draft ends, you hit your league mates up, like, hey, Penix is available for like a first next year. No one's taking that. You have to literally wait for him to actually play a game. And Kirk's been usually like a picture of health until last year. And he's not a running quarterback. I don't think I really care about his Achilles tear that much. He's not Trey Lance, whose like game was predicated off his legs. His game was predicated off his arm and his ability to be a game manager. So I like, you are betting on an injury and for Penix to take off for like one game on that injury, and that your league mates will actually trade for him after that one game too. This is like, this value of this pick immediately goes down until that. Like, I think this is a fine pick for the second, but I don't think you can play the value game with this. Like, this is a stash pick, and it's a multi-year commitment stash pick.
I want to give a non-PG if here, but I don't want Austin to yell at me, so I'll just give the canned.
You get one curse word to be.
It
PG,
wasn't a curse word. I'll say it, but see, we can't edit it out because this is going on YouTube. I don't want to get myself in trouble. It's bad. I promise you, it's bad. So
hey,
I'll just say,
boss.
if candies and nuts are ifs and buts, whatever. We just made multiple ifs and buts for all the players before Penix as well, though. So, like, you can't.
There were like one or two variables. I don't have to wait 4 years.
There's only one variable.
I will find out what Pearsall's role is after next year, and I'll find out what Keon Coleman's role is after like week 4. I'll find out Leggette's role after like week 4.
And what's the stat? I don't have it in front of me, so this is probably going to butcher it. But there's, I believe, on average, 36 starting quarterbacks a year in the NFL due to injuries. So you can't, just because Kirk Cousins has been a picture of health up until this year, doesn't mean he will be moving forward. So again, your backup quarterbacks are the most highly valued thing, not just in the NFL, but also in fantasy football. I don't disagree with you. Some league mates will not take Michael Penix after one big game, but if he goes out there and has one, we saw a lot of people flipping Will Levis for first. It's an if and but. I completely agree with you, but all the players before him, up until even Jonathan Brooks, were if and buts. So, like, again, you're going to get more back in a trade for Michael Penix if he goes to his value than any of the guys ahead of him.
I know, like we say, there's ifs and buts for a lot of the people, but don't you feel like when it comes to Michael Penix, like there's that one if and but it's a lower chance, I feel like, for him to hit that.
It is, yes.
Like it's predicated on Kirk Cousins essentially missing time or not being, and they put a big investment into Kirk Cousins. Like, it seems like they're talking about they want to go the Jordan Love route, and then, like, to Mike's point, Jordan Love lost value for, like, once he was a first round pick for multiple years until this year when we finally saw him. I think that's gonna have to be like the Michael Penix route for him. He's gonna have to show himself, when he gets a chance, and maybe 3 years down the line. Like, I think that's the most likely scenario. Is there a scenario where Kirk Cousins gets injured, he comes in and shows out or whatever, and maybe they figure out a way to trade Kirk Cousins? I don't know. That would be like the all-time scenario you need for Michael Penix to work out, and that just feels like a low hit rate for him. So I don't mind the later investment. It feels like this is kind of where he's been going, honestly, in drafts. Maybe a little bit earlier, more like the 205, 204, whatever, like shortly after Bo Nix, but I feel like this is fair. Like, I think I'm a little bit more pessimistic about his chances to recoup that value at least early. Like, I could be able to trade for, if I like Michael Penix, I could be able to trade for him next year for a lot lower than what this is going to cost me.
Yeah, nailed it. Cory, you want to give us our the 208?
Okay, sorry. Spent a lot of time talking to Michael Penix there, but 208, I'm going with a guy, again, similar to Brian Thomas that I took earlier. I don't necessarily think he's a perfect player, but Mr. Adonai Mitchell, going over to the Colts here. Very high athletic player. We saw that testing at the combine. The problem is we didn't necessarily see that testing on the field, and that's probably my biggest problem with him is I just don't see that kind of play speed. There's not a lot of yak ability there. There's a lot of ability at the catch point, similar to a lot of the guys we talked about as well, but a body contortion, like George Pickens-esque almost at the catch point, but it's everything else. He's a little bit wild in his route running. You don't see the deep separation that you'd expect for someone who ran like a 4.31. And I mean, there's apparently character issues with him. I mean, some people talked about how he doesn't take his diabetes seriously. Sometimes you see him, he'll come in as an angry person into practice. Now, these are all just anonymous quotes. I don't know how much this is true, but he's a very bipolar player because of the diabetes. When he doesn't take care of it properly, it makes him angry. When he takes care of it, he's the happiest player on earth. And then there's other stuff where he's taking plays off on the field. Like, there's just some red flags here that I'm concerned about. And I'm not surprised to see him drop all the way down here. I think if it weren't for us drafting here, I think he goes higher than this. But because I think we all agree on some of the red flags with him and we're a little bit worried about him, he falls all the way to 208 here. And again, the place lining with the Colts, I mean, they still have Michael Pittman, who they just re-signed to a big contract. Josh Downs is someone we believe in quite a bit. He's going to be running out of the slot as well. And he proved to be like for a couple of games there, at least a pretty high value target out of the slot until he got injured and wasn't really himself further down the line. So he's going to be taking over Alec Pierce's role. And I mean, Alex Pierce ran a ton of routes for this team, like was on the field a lot and just didn't show up. So Adonai Mitchell is going to have opportunity, and there's some parts of it where Anthony Richardson kind of syncs up with him, where he can just chuck him the ball, throw him deep. Like he's not a very accurate passer, so you can just put in the vicinity of Adonai, and maybe he can come down with it. That can be the kind of player that I think he can be for them. There's a lot of red flags here that I'm a little bit concerned about. So 208, I'm happy to put the investment in here. I don't really want to go earlier than this.
Yeah, I don't think he beats out Josh Downs on a like target share perspective. And as like a wide receiver 3 on a target share perspective from Anthony Richardson, it's kind of like a hard pass for me. And I think you kind of nailed everything else about it too. And he talked about how Adonai is a bit of a project, even though we do think his skills, like he has all the first round talent. They never put it together. And I just don't like project wide receivers next level. It's just not for me. But also, like, I'm shitting on that, but like, I would have taken him here too. Like, I would have taken him here.
It was getting to that point. Like, he has enough upside to warrant the investment here.
And one more note before I get over to Matt Bruening here. If you do like analytics or like to see some like common markers, for a long time he was marked down as an early declare. First off, it's way too hard to dig out the NFL official list of early declares. You have to put in a special waiver by January 15th, and that's what gives you your early declare status. And early declares had to be 3 years removed from high school. That is what an early declare status is. I looked up the list, and Adonai Mitchell did not apply for one of those waivers, which means that he was a regular declare.
Sorry. I just got to look at the Devi guide cover.
Okay. Oh, and then fun fact while I'm on it, only 34 early declares this year, all-time low, probably because of NIL. But again, that's not what the show's about.
COVID.
I agree with everything you guys said on Adonai Mitchell. I will say he's probably going to end up on the bench sooner rather than later. The one time Anthony Richardson takes off and he decides not to block, and his quarterback gets absolutely leveled, and so they're just going to put him on the bench.
Fair enough.
Alec Pierce was actually out there blocking. The dude's big. Dude was a tight end with a wide receiver level athleticism, I swear. Matt, give us a 209. Or no, is that
you.
Matt?
That's you. I'm up after you.
All right, let's trade. I'm just playing. All right, let me get Marshawn Lloyd here. My RB3 in this class. I'm sure a lot of people are shocked by how late this one. We just went like I think 9 picks here without a running back. He goes to Green Bay. Marshawn Lloyd is a runner, likes to bounce stuff out wide a lot, but I love the size. I love the athletic testing. Those are 2 positive indicators for me. Josh Jacobs just signed a long-term contract. Like I don't think he's ever the 1A in this running back system, and at best he's the 1B. And AJ Dillon's probably on his way out, or he should be out probably by next year. So I think Lloyd kind of takes over maybe like the pass catching role or the 1B. But anyway, this is not only a handcuff, but a guy that could see get like 10 to 15 touches. It's kind of like I'll wait to see how he has used, but I don't think he has that high of a ceiling. He's more of a like change of pace plus where like maybe you can fill him in for a flex if you have to, but like the real upside is if Josh Jacobs goes down to injury, who might have signed a long-term contract, but he's like 26 and running backs get hurt all the time. So I will get that opportunity.
Yep.
There was investment here at least, and that's the one thing that you can rely on. But I do wonder if they kind of view him as more of a complementary player because they put such a big investment into Josh Jacobs. Maybe they just wanted to target somebody that was going to complement him very well. I don't know if they view him as a successor. That's probably like my one worry. But again, like you said, Josh Jacobs getting up there as well, but came in for very young. He's still kind of a young player as well, and we see running backs get hurt all the time. So all he needs is an opportunity there.
Matt, 210, or you got anything to say on Lloyd?
No, I agree with what you guys said on Lloyd. At 210, I'm taking Ray Davis. Again, all you need is an injury. I don't think there's much difference between him and James Cook. Latavius Murray, I don't even think is back with the Buffalo Bills. They have nobody else on that roster. I think he's a better receiving back, actually, than James Cook. Now, James Cook did get a bulk of the carries last year, but I think that could be more split. That's what they used to do up until last season. There was a pretty close, it wasn't quite 50-50. It was more like 60-40. It was definitely much different than that last year. It was James Cook got a bulk of it. It was almost like a 65-35, 70-30 split between him and Latavius Murray. I think that could move to more of a 60-40 split. Ray Davis, again, won't be like an RB1, but I do think we'll have those weeks where he is an RB2. And if James Cook gets hurt at any point, I would not be surprised if Ray Davis is carrying a bulk of the carries. Everything, you obviously have to worry about Josh Allen stealing some rushes and touchdowns as well. But I love the landing spot for Davis, and I'm excited to see what he does.
Yeah, I think this is.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, go. I think it's a split. And I think you kind of nailed it there. I think James Cook only had 5 rushing attempts inside the 5-yard line. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I think Josh Allen gets high off that stuff. He loves running into the line, but he's 27, can't do that forever. And I think Ray Davis could be the early down bang and get some goal line work. And then I echo the sentiment of like a 60-40 split. I do think James Cook is a better pass catcher, but Ray Davis is certainly a very capable pass catcher. It should get his own target share too. So definitely like a 1B/1A, I guess, because he probably will get the workload for the goal line stuff. Like kind of like a discount version of Gibbs and Montgomery, like kind of like that.
Yeah, I typically agree with like everything you said there in the pass catching thing. Like I do think James Cooks probably has him on the pass catching thing a little bit, but what he doesn't have is some of the power that Ray Davis can play with. And he's a little bit more versatile than just your average power back as well. He's got a little bit of jitterbug to him as well. But I mean, we saw it in the red zone. They would always have like Latavius Murray in the red zone, or they would bring in Leonard Fournette, join the team for a while. They were bringing him in the red zone, trying to pound
32-year-old Latavius Murray, dude.
And
dude's always sticking around, always involved somehow.
Yeah, it's so it seems like they've been trying to find that compliment for him, and hopefully they found it here with Ray Davis. I like the spot, very sneaky spot. So glad to see our boy Matt finally arriving somewhere. It's been a long road for Mr. Ray Davis, Mr. Ramon Davis, as we know him. Yeah. But glad to see him land there. So at 211, I'm going to head over to a wide receiver love for a lot of us here at C2C, Mr. Jalen McMillan, wide receiver at Washington. I think this was surprising for a lot of people, not to us at all, but to see him end up in day 3, going over to the Bucs. And this was a guy that I comped to Chris Godwin for like his whole career. It's like very similar size, very similar versatility to play outside, inside. Has some ability at the catch point, has some yak ability as well. Very good footwork. Like this is the kind of guy that can be a quarterback's best friend. Similar to what Chris Godwin was able to do for Tom Brady. And I mean, we saw Baker prefer to target Mike Evans last year, so Chris Godwin kind of had a down year, but he's still a very good player, still sticking around here. And I think Jalen McMillan kind of lines up as the successor for Chris Godwin. When I'd have to pull up his contract right now, but I don't like to do things when we're recording because my computer starts to slow down, but I don't know what his contract is. But regardless, I think, I don't view many contracts in the NFL as more than 2 years. There's always a way out. There's always some kind of trade. There's always something that people can do to get out of a contract. So I feel like Jalen McMillan is the kind of guy who's going to take over going forward. The biggest question is what the Bucs can do at quarterback, but I think Baker's at least good enough to at least be a serviceable bridge until they find that next guy. Then we can be excited about him joining together with Jalen McMillan, maybe being the wide receiver 1A to this offense going forward. So Jalen McMillan here, 211. Love that he got that 3rd round capital.
Chris Godwin just got a 3-year, $60 million extension. There is an out after 2025, though.
Yeah.
I love the skill set too. I really do. I love that the Bucs know how to scout wide receiver talent. They're only like 3 deep right now. Like I think Trey Palmer's still like
the 3 for right now. Yeah.
For now. Because I think he's more athlete than like refined, polished wide receiver. And like Mike Evans and Godwin, I feel like one of them's always kind of hurt or banged up. So maybe there's like an increased role there. But this is a very big my guy for me and Cory. You're in the late 2nd. Like it's kind of like at your guy territory. So I like this. And he could be like, he won't be a dud, but he could be nothing, like not startable either, for you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's not startable like year 1, unless Godwin or Evans get hurt. I mean, Mike mentioned out after 2025. It's a legitimate out, as in like there's no dead cap hit at all. So like they can literally just cut him and it's not going to affect their salary whatsoever or their cap hit. And the only really fear I have with McMillan, because I do think he is the future, is just what that team will look like. I don't know that Baker's the future of that team. I don't know that team is going to look the same maybe by the time McMillan takes over as the possible wide receiver 2 or 1 in that offense. But I believe in the skill talent. So like getting him here, like you might have to wait a year or 2, but he could be that guy who in the past, those typical, like you wait 3 years to kind of get something out of your wide receivers that you draft. I think you could get something out of him in a couple of years.
Mike Evans is old too. What is he,
Yeah.
31 this season?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, this could be a change of the guard. We'll see how he plays out, but this is an upside pick. It's 211. Matt. Is it Matt? Is it me?
That's you again.
It's me. Jeez, dude. Just keep trying to trade back. I take tight end Ben Sinnott here. The second round tight end. This is only the second tight end too in a tight end premium league. I'm taking him more for the draft capital. I did love the skill set. I think he's a good pass catcher. Love talking to him at the Senior Bowl. Like the guy is funny. His favorite play, like he loves to hit. His favorite play was actually like a hitting play. Loves to like kind of like hit like the blind side of a defensive tackle, but he like only likes to do it when they don't know it's coming. So it's like he's funny about that. But Benson is a really good talent here. Tight end. Washington's always looking for a tight end. They don't really have one on the roster right now. I think Terry's the locked number one. And Jahan had like a rough second year. We'll see if he bounces back. But Sinnott could slide in as a number 2 target of the future year. If not, number 3. And we'll see how he develops. But I think he could be one of those tight ends that's like a like perennial top 12. Maybe not top 6, but he hits that like 6 to 12 range. And that's kind of like, that's the upside of Ben Sinnott.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to Washington, right?
Yeah.
My big fear with that is, Cliff Kingsbury, I don't know if he even realizes tight ends exist in the offense. And on top of that, he's got so many weapons around him with Terry McLaurin. Golly, who's the guy that got drafted in way too
Jahan.
early?
They had Jahan.
Yeah, Jahan Dotson. I mentioned earlier, I don't really necessarily love Jaden Daniels' passing chops overall. So, like, I that would be my biggest concern really is the offense around him if he can succeed and become like a top 12 tight end. But I don't disagree with you. It's not hard to get there. So there is a possibility.
Yeah. And I forgot to mention Zach Ertz is on a 1-year deal, but he is there. 1-year deal.
Yeah, that's just a good veteran presence for him to learn from. I don't think
locker room guy.
Yeah, I don't think anybody is expecting a lot from him going forward. But yeah, decent landing spot here, and new quarterback there. All of receiving weapons. They took a guy we didn't even draft in this draft, so I could say his name. But they took Luke McCaffrey, I think day 3 too, which was day 2 as well, which is kind of surprising. But trying to rebuild that offense a little bit. Let's see if they can get something out of these guys.
Recapping the second round, at the 201, we got Ladd McConkey, wide receiver, going to the Chargers. At the 202, we got Bo Nix, quarterback, going to Denver. At the 203, we have Keon Coleman, wide receiver, going to Buffalo. The 204, we got Ricky Pearsall, wide receiver, going to San Francisco. The 205, we have Xavier Legette, wide receiver, going to Carolina. At the 206, we have Roman Wilson, wide receiver, going to Pitt. At the 207, we have a colossal mistake in Michael Penix, quarterback, going to Atlanta. At the 208, we have Adonai Mitchell, wide receiver, going to Indianapolis. At the 209, we got Marshawn Lloyd, running back, going to Green Bay. At the 210, we have Ray Davis, running back, going to Buffalo. At the 211, we have Jalen McMillan, wide receiver, going to Tampa Bay. And at the 212, we have Ben Sinnott, tight end, going to Washington. Matt, hit us off on the 301.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm just grabbing players I think have a chance to do something. Jalen Polk goes in there. I think he can be the wide receiver 1 for the Patriots, and possibly Drake Mays, wide receiver 1. Mike and I were talking before the show. I think Kendrick Bourne probably leads the wide receiver room this year. But again, a guy attached to Drake May, who we talked about earlier, could be the best quarterback in this draft class. Like, give me his possible wide receiver 1 in round 3.
Yeah, he's an interesting situation here because I don't think me and Mike really loved him that much. And I mean, I think we even see some similarities like a Devontae Parker type player. So it's funny that they go back after like a Devontae Parker type player here with Jalen Polk.
We love it. We love our three talents going in the second round.
Yeah, so kind of an ominous profile a little bit, but I mean, he's going to have potential there. So that's at least exciting. And at round 3, I mean, it's not. You're not hurting yourself here with this kind of investment. I'll go over to 302 here. We're going to kind of speed through this third round a little bit more. I'm going with a guy that I was taking a lot earlier in the offseason, and that's Mr. Troy Franklin going over to Denver in round 4, rehooking up with Bo Nix, the guy I took a little bit earlier. So I like that link up a little bit, and I think that can help him gain some chemistry. It just seems like the NFL didn't like, the fact that Troy Franklin doesn't have like the greatest play strength. He is a little bit thin in the frame. He might be a little bit not a singular role, but he might not be as versatile as some type of guys that you want. He's very DJ Charkish kind of a guy we talked about a little bit earlier when we talked about Brian Thomas. So I wonder if maybe some people just didn't like that about him, but I love a lot of the things I saw on tape. I saw route deception. I saw good footwork. I saw efficient footwork. I see a guy who has a lot of potential to be unlocked at the next level. And I like the hookup here with Bo Nix. I think here I was happy to take him. I think in drafts, you always play the value game. So, if I can get him here in round 3, then I might. But if I was in a draft, like I was in a draft the other day where we're starting to draft now in a lot of my rookie leagues, and there was a Denver fan, and I know that he loves Troy Franklin. So I traded up to 207 to take him right in front of him at 208 and take him just because I'm a Troy Franklin fan. So I think anywhere after that 207 range, Troy Franklin comes into the range here for me, but I knew I'd get him here drafting with you guys. So I was happy to wait until the 302.
You owe me an apology for bullying me for a year saying I'm too low on Troy Franklin. I'll never forget this.
I'm not admitting that yet. Let's see what happens.
To defend him, though, I did see some reports on Twitter. The reason he fell was because this is also, I'm third-hand reporting an unconfirmed source. The guy says it's confirmed, but you know how it is nowadays. That he bombed his interviews and that there was questions about
I heard that too.
His love for the sport. Both those bullet points don't address that he's actually talented. So I'm a little bit like, I feel like you're almost going to get a discount now for Troy Franklin. And he gets linked up with his quarterback.
This is a Mon-Ra range. Just throwing that out there.
and he has linked up with the quarterback, and there's clear opportunity to be the number 2. And I do like Cortland. I think Cortland's a perennially undervalued guy, just like Kirk Cousins is. Yeah, apparently. But he can win the 2 right away. I don't think Marvin Mims is anything. He can win the 2 right away, and Cortland can be out by his 3rd year there because Cortland's 28 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I think with not comparing the players because he's not Michael Thomas, but the way they schemed Michael Thomas open and hitting him with those slants so much, I think Troy Franklin could thrive in this offense with slots, and he already has that connection with Bo Nix. I kind of agree with you guys. I probably should have picked him earlier.
I struggled in our homely draft because I almost took him over Leggett as well. Which 4th round receiver over a 1st round? It's just that.
It's hard to stomach. At least this early after the draft. Sometimes when dust settles, this can become more stomach. You can be able to stomach it a little bit better. But right after the draft, it's hard.
Yeah. So at the 203, I took Javon Baker here. This is the last wide receiver I think I care about for the most part. I think Javon's probably the better rookie wide receiver of the 2 New England guys that got drafted. I think Polk has a Tylan Wallace jump ball skill set. I think he's a great blocker too, and he's fine in zone. But that's more like a role player. I think Baker, and I went to go revisit the tape. This is me coping. I coped last night with this one pretty hard. And he gets north pretty well. There's some nice parts about his game. His route running, I don't think it's anything special, but he's very good released off the line. And once he gets the ball in his hands, he's very good at getting north with the ball. He's a very good yak threat. He's a little bit smarter there. So me and Matt did talk about it. I still think it's Bourne as number 1, but Baker is a guy that could probably have enough impact as a rookie that you could probably flip him for a value in the 2nd round. And I don't think Polk's skill set is that of a fancy wide receiver, but more of an actual real NFL wide receiver. Great hands, great contested catch, good blocker. He's going to be a really good team player, but I think Baker will be more involved in the receiving game than Polk is. And mentally, we made fun of Colin, but mentally, if I switched Javon Baker in the 2nd and Polk in the 4th, I like it a little bit more. Go Patriots. All right.
You want me to give my pick?
And I think we fixed our wide receiver problem next year, so he probably gets drafted over. This is a sell. This is a 1-year rental and sell. All right. Yeah, go ahead and give your pick.
So I went with Isaac Guerendo here. Really the only competition, in my opinion, he has is Elijah Mitchell for that RB2 role because neither one of them is beating out Christian McCaffrey. Goes to the San Francisco 49ers. Look, he's not the best running back prospect in this draft, but where I think he will thrive is when he gets through the hole, he used that burst, he used that speed, and he can be a physical runner, which I don't think Elijah Mitchell is. Christian McCaffrey is for his size. The dude will run over anybody. But with the way that Kyle Shanahan calls the run game and the offensive line blocks and creates that holes, I think it'll make it easier for Guerendo to know exactly where to go. So I think that he could thrive here as the RB2. They could use him in red zone situations. I would not be surprised if they try and pull back a little bit on Christian McCaffrey as well. Had almost 300 rushing attempts last year on top of 80 plus targets. He's a phenomenal player, but at some point he's got to start slowing down. I think Guerendo easily could take over that over for Elijah Mitchell in that offense. My biggest concern is, if you go look at his college tape, he did a lot of running just to the left and really struggled going to the right. I don't understand that whatsoever, but that's just the way it was. But I think at this point, 3rd round, a Kyle Shanahan running back, like why not?
It's a great handcuff. I think he pinballed. His vision sucks, but they play in a weak division. If they can just open the hole and point him towards the hole with his speed, like it's going to work out just fine. And even if CMC does time out here, which is like 2-3 years, maybe, I don't know. I don't really think Grendo's like the future. So another guy that I probably like hope to flip if he like gets hot, like I just hope to flip him. But that's usually how I view almost all handcuffs, by the way. I just want to flip handcuffs. Ray Davis too, who I don't think will ever get like the full workload. I'm probably looking to flip him, but not like for a discount.
But a 49ers back is the kind of back that everybody, at least in redraft leagues, spends their entire fab on when Christian McCaffrey goes down, because everybody wants that Shanny back. So, I mean, if you could just pass Mitchell, who spends a lot of time injured, that's definitely a path there.
Yeah.
Over at the 305, I'm going with a guy that should have gone earlier in this draft. I'm telling you, Jermaine Burton going over to the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't want to, like, this is why people call Devi guys take lock, because you guys are too locked on the fact that you don't like Jermaine Burton, but you don't realize the great location that he landed in with a great quarterback, with T. Higgins, who's probably traded at least this year or next year or whatever. And then he lines up on the, you just took Javon Baker, who Jermaine Burton is like a better version of. Okay, I don't care about this.
I don't even know about that.
He's
a
more explosive version than Javon Baker. Yes, he can do everything that Javon Baker can do, except he's a way more explosive player. He finally found a role that he thrived in after searching so much in college to find a role he could thrive in. He found that as a deep vertical threat, highest ADOT in the class. Like over like 8 plays of 40+ yards, just thrive down the field with his hands, with his ability to go up and to catch the ball as well, with his ball tracking ability, with his sideline awareness. Like that was really where he thrived, and he's explosive as hell. We've seen him in good yards after the catch situations as well. We can just get him the ball. Man, is Jermaine Burton like a third world version of Jamar Chase, even in some fashions? Yes, he is. Jermaine Burton at 305. You guys should have taken him a lot sooner than here, and I'm glad to take him.
He's just as good as Andre Yoshua.
Oh, come on. Move on to your next horrible pick, 306.
Real quick, though, he's got some off-fielders that reported. Cincinnati is a very boring city. Matt can back me up on that. He won't have any issues.
So where would he have gone without the
issue? He might find a way to have issues, but it will be hard.
It will be hard, yeah. His role is hype man, by the way, on the bench. That's his role. All right, just kidding. 306, that's me. I picked, let me check my notes, Jalen Wright. What a good pick. I knew that was going to be my pick. All right, Jalen Wright, which I picked over Blake Corum, by the way. We'll be talking about that later. Jalen Wright is a speedy guy that faced all these light boxes in college, which makes him kind of a mystery as a runner, which I don't like going to the NFL. I like that going to high school, to college. That's fine. Mystery box all day. Don't like the mystery box going to the NFL draft. Here's the thing. He's fast. And he goes to a coach that loves fast players and knows how to scheme these fast players into space to let them be fast. Miami has a rotation of Achane and Jeff Wilson and forgetting the main guy, Raheem Mostert. A lot of these guys can't stay healthy. Actually, none of them can. So Jalen Wright's going to get his at some point in time. Until then, though, good luck guessing which one's going to get the touchdown. Like, good luck with that. But if they go down to injury, Jalen Wright to the moon. Well, maybe not to the moon, but probably like to the atmosphere, stratosphere. A little bit high. I'll be getting kind of high. I'll be getting higher than the North Korean missile program, that's for sure. So, Matt at the 307.
Devontae Walker goes to Baltimore. Obviously, probably at best the third behind Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers, but I do think he brings a different dynamic to that offense, possibly even as their deep threat, who they currently have is Nelson Aguilar, who I think he is much better than Nelson Aguilar there. Lamar Jackson, though, does struggle throwing the deep ball. I mean, a lot of people talked about how bad Hollywood Brown was, but if you actually look, it was a lot of that unrealized air yards. Like Lamar Jackson was just not hitting him accurately down the field. He was actually fairly poor throwing the ball deep down the field. So that also does hurt him, but I don't think Rashad Bateman is going to really live up to anything anymore. Tylan Wallace there.
Hey.
I wouldn't be surprised if Devontae Walker ends up being, again, the third on that depth chart. At this point, with his athletic testing, everything, I'm just going for upside in an offense that I expect to be good.
Dude, I forgot to set the player. I'm slacking. I'm not a believer in Devontae Walker, and Lamar spread the ball around way too much for me to take the wide receiver 2 or 3.
You're not a believer in Devontae Walker. You touted his name all offseason.
No, I didn't. I was the exact opposite during the Senior Bowl. There's no way. I definitely switched tone at the Senior Bowl.
Way late. I mean,
at the Senior Bowl. Then Cory's right. You were talking about him all year. Senior Bowl's at the end of the year.
I still like some of the upside. I think some issues were brought to the forefront once we got into the Senior Bowl setting, like maybe some ball tracking issues, maybe some hand technique. But I mean, you're taking a shot here deep in the third. I think that's a fine place to take on his athletic traits. I mean, he blew up the combine. I mean, so this is the perfect place to kind of take a shot on a guy like this, in my opinion. At 308, I'm going with a guy that had a lot of hype as well. Mr. Malachi Corley heading over to the Jets. And I think that there is a realm here where Malachi Corley can kind of be like the new Randall Cobb for Aaron Rodgers and the Jets offense. You know, a guy that runs out of the slot, runs a lot of those short routes, isn't a guy that really succeeds down the field very much. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Randall Cobb is still in the building with the New York Jets as well. More of a just overseeing guy, but I believe he brought him along over there, and I think he's still there. So maybe he can learn a little bit from Randall Cobb, learn what Aaron Rodgers likes as well. I think this is a guy that could see the field pretty early as well in that slot role. They don't really have anybody else to fill that slot role over there. And I think we could see a big jump from the New York Jets offense because we all had a lot of beliefs for them when Aaron Rodgers was going to be the quarterback, but then he goes down and they just struggle to really find their way. But Breece Hall really had some nice games. You know that the wide receiver talent is there with Garrett Wilson as well. And now you bring in Aaron Rodgers back healthy. Maybe this is the kind of guy that can have a sneaky rookie season, given what we've seen with him do with some of these slot players in the past. So happy to take a shot on Malachi Corley here at 308.
Yeah, there's a role here. Like, there's no one fills his role, and I think that's what I'm hanging my hat on. Like, I don't think he's more talented than Garrett Wilson, but like he has a defined role in this offense.
Yeah.
Is it me again?
That's you, my friend.
At the 309, I'm taking a player that I can't believe I ended up drafting. Out of all people, I can't believe I'm the one that ended up drafting this guy. And I really thought he would have gone somewhere earlier in the third. But so I feel like this is a value. But I'm taking running back Blake Corum with the Rams here. The Rams have a type. They just signed Boston Scott. They love their short power backs that aren't anything special as athletes. Kyron had a historic season, like not historic, but like his workload towards the end was insane. Like 31 rushing attempts. You don't see that in the NFL. Like that's Michigan numbers in college. So I just think this is a type here. I don't really think Corum takes a ton away from Kyron. I think Kyron's actually almost approaching a buy category. We'll see where he goes in keep trade cut. But I think Corum's brought in here to take the workload off of Kyron. Kyron's still the one. I think Corum's the two. Maybe gets like 30%, 40%, but I think they're just rebuilding the room because they just kept losing dudes. They kept having to sign guys off the streets last year. So I think they just rebuilt the room. Corum's number two. Obviously, all number two running backs get their shot to start because running backs can't stay healthy the entire year. It's just not really possible. And then obviously very similar prototype to Kyron. So he probably just picks right up where Kyron belongs or lefts off. So I think Corum is my pick here at the 309.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I think he could get a little bit more carries just because maybe they'll use Kyron as a receiving back a little bit more and take some of that work off of him. But I mean, I personally don't think Corum's anything special. So, and I don't think he's going to have the offensive line he had at Michigan blocking for him either. So we'll see how successful he is in the NFL.
Matt, give us a 310.
Taking the next Jordan Love, Michael Pratt. Granted, didn't go in the first round like Jordan Love did, but I think you could argue, at least at this point, coming out of Tulane as a better, in my opinion, better quarterback prospect than what Jordan Love was coming out of Utah State. The Green Bay Packers took him at the end of the first round, expecting him to be the guy after Aaron Rodgers with what he can do, not only running the ball, but also I think he's got one of the stronger arms in this class. I get Michael Penix is extremely strong. I don't think Pratt's as much weaker than Michael Penix's extremely strong arm. Obviously, the mechanics are a little bit all over the place, but we know he's not expected to start anytime soon. Like Jordan Love is going to be there for the next 2-3 years. I would not be surprised if they do the same thing they did to Aaron Rodgers after a couple of years, unless Jordan Love goes out there and wins the Super Bowl. They're like, hey, we're good. We're moving on to this guy. I think there's a legitimate shot that Michael Pratt is a starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers in the next couple of years. I believe in the talent. So I'm going to take him here and just stash him on my bench for a couple of years.
Yeah, I would say that, I know you guys like him quite a bit. I haven't been as quite high as you guys, but I mean, taking a 7th-round quarterback here, it's not bold, but at least given where some other guys landed or what you could have done, it's a belief in the talent. You're pretty much saying you're believing this guy's going to be like the next Brock Purdy in a sense. Like the 7th-round pick, it comes out of nowhere and really shows himself to be a good player in camp and earns himself a spot, maybe quarterback 2, and then just gets in there for injury and maybe he takes over, whatever. That's kind of what you're hoping is a path from, or at least shows something to be to be someone you want to invest in, can spot start or whatever. But bold pick there. I will say that. I'm going over to 311, and I had a couple different options here. We'll get into some of our honorable mentions here. But for my last pick, I ended up going with Audric Estime, or running back, going over to Denver. And a lot of the reasons I took him here is because I know when you heard Sean Payton talk about him in the press conference after, he talked to him as an early down runner, first down runner, second down runner. And I know that Javonte is there doing that, but maybe they're starting to lose faith in Javonte a little bit. I don't know. We saw him come off the injury, a predictably low season after coming off that injury as well. But maybe they're just worried about where he's going. Maybe they're worried about giving him that second contract. Maybe Audric Estime is kind of like the backup plan that he kind of fill in and be that guy if they don't kind of come to terms with Javonte going forward. And I think he can profile as like an early down banger. I think there's like some dynamic parts missing there. He's never going to be a pass catcher. He's never going to be that. I mean, Jaleel McLaughlin there that they have in the backfield as well probably fill that role. But if Javonte ever goes down, you're going to get Audric Estime going into there. Maybe this is a new offensive going forward for Denver as well, with Troy Franklin coming in, Bo Nix coming in, and maybe they become a little more high powered further down the line. Audric Estime is the guy to take over a little bit later. Could be a guy that you have to stash for a while, but I think he's got some upside there that I want to take advantage of. So Audric Estime here at 311.
With the final pick, I am taking JT Sanders, tight end for Carolina. They say about David players we're take Lockheed, but it's the final pick of the third round, so who really cares?
It's not a bad pick. It's not a bad pick at all.
Yeah, no, it's a fourth round pick, and I just poo-pooed the entire Carolina receiving core, all of them. They're just all they're all dead. So why not JT Sanders, who can block and pass catch? I obviously overvalued his skill set. Thought he was more of a second rounder in the NFL. Fell here to the early fourth. But once again, he can pass catch, he can block. Tight ends have late breakouts all the time. Draft capital matters. It's always a positive indicator for every single position group. I think it matters the least for tight ends out of everybody else. So I'm taking JT Sanders here. I struggled with this pick before I had to we'll get into honorable mentions in a second, though. The 3-0, let me do the recap. Do you guys have anything to say about JT Sanders?
No. Yeah, just the guy who hates tight ends took 3 of them in a rookie draft. So, or
two.
Sorry,
2. Good opportunity there in Carolina, though.
And a tight end premium draft. Chris Moxley's probably upset right now. But anyway,
this is a good spot. This is a good value. I think he goes earlier than this. I really do.
Yeah, me too. This entire third round, you guys really messed up. I'm just telling you that.
You guys messed up.
At the 301, Jalen Polk, wide receiver for New England. Wide receiver 5 for New England, probably. Troy Franklin at the 302, wide receiver for Denver. The 303, Javon Baker, wide receiver for New England. The 304, Isaac Guerrero, running back for San Francisco. At the 305, we got Jermaine Burton, wide receiver for Cincinnati. At the 306, we have Jalen Wright, running back for Miami. At the 307, Devontae Walker, wide receiver for Baltimore. The 308, we have Malachi Corley, wide receiver for the Jets. At the 309, we have Blake Corum, running back for the Rams. At the 310, we got Michael Pratt, QB for Green Bay. At the 311, Audric Estime, running back for Denver. And at the 312, we have JT Sanders, tight end for Carolina. And Cory, you better be so fast with these honorable mentions because Matt Bruening is trying to go to bed.
Okay, honorable mention. I'll try to be quick here because I got to get going too. But Audric Estime, I was thinking about just going with it back there. I do kind of like the idea of Braylon Allen still here as well, a guy that we thought would go a lot higher, but just landed in an awful spot for his value. Yeah. He's basically handcuffed like one of the best running backs in the league. But if that guy ever goes down, maybe we see a little bit from Braylon Allen. Maybe he ends up going somewhere else eventually. This is still a guy that I think has some talent. He could have been picked there as well at 311. And I'll just say, following the quarterback thing, you go with Michael Pratt there at 310, Matt. I would have gone with Spencer Rattler. We've seen Derek Carr have his ups and downs over there at the Saints as well. Spencer Rattler, who I think still has an incredible arm, but just has a lot of stuff in between the ears that I think he has to figure out. Maybe he can get it figured out at the next level because he never was able to in college. But I think, if Derek Carr continues his up and down play, Spencer Rattler will get a shot sooner rather than later. Because I really think the only reason they stuck with Derek Carr sometimes was because there was nobody else. So, Spencer Rattler at least supplies some competition to him. It could be a guy that I think you take in the third round. There's some reasonable upside there.
My only honorable mention is going to be Theo Johnson, really here, tight end for the Giants. Had better draft capital than Sanders. Thought he was underutilized at Penn State. Penn State always has these great athletes. But the Giants have a clear need. Darren Waller just retired. I'm not sure if that's rumored or that's confirmed that he just retired. But
confirmed, I think now, yeah.
Okay, so he's on his way out, and we just went through the depth chart earlier. It's just neighbors now. That's it. So there's clear opportunity there for him to have an increased role for himself. And then just as general draft strategy, I'm grabbing every single handcuffed running back that I can in the third, late third, early fourth round. I'm grabbing them. They're going to touch the field. They'll kick off, and then I'll sell them to whoever actually owns the actual RB1 of whatever system for like a third or a second, whatever. I'll get back my value. But like that's my strategy here. And I leave the rest, like all these wide receivers that are now left on the board, I could care less. Most of these guys are like special teamers and depth pieces.
Yeah, I'm
right,
Darren
Matt.
Waller. 100% I would retire too. I mean,
yeah,
gorgeous wife. I would want to spend more time with her than.
I heard they were breaking up. Actually, I heard.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Oh, he didn't know that. I thought he was just taking stabs
maybe,
at him.
Maybe he's just
I really
depressed.
did not.
Maybe he's just depressed.
I really did not know that. I feel bad now. They just got married like a year ago.
They just like announced a divorce a couple days ago.
Golly, I really did not know that.
Poor
Darren
guy,
Waller,
poor
I know
guy,
you
dude.
listen. I am so sorry.
All right.
Minor. I'm just going to stick with two of them because I forgot Derrick Henry went to the wherever Derrick Henry went to the Ravens. So Rasheen Ali's is going to mean nothing now. Anaya Smith and Will Shipley both going to the Eagles. I mean, they right now the starting slot wide receiver for the Eagles is Paris Campbell. Like, I think that Anaya Smith is better than Paris Campbell as a receiver. They could use him as well in different ways than that Nick Sirianni offense. Obviously, he's never going to be the guy with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith there. Devonta Smith, I believe, just got a contract extension as well. So, like, it's not a guy that, like, you're expecting to be, like, some massive fantasy producer. But especially in best ball leagues, I think he could be a guy who could win you weeks with his rushing upside and, again, as well as a receiver. And then Will Shipley, I mean, I think he's better than Kenneth Gainwell. I don't disagree with Mike, who I think said on our Devi caller something when we talked about Will Shipley that like he's more of like a change of pace back, but they do tend to use running backs, like two different ones a lot in Philadelphia. So I think if he can take over for Kenneth Gainwell, he has some fantasy upside. So for him to kind of go here into the fourth round, and he did get the draft capital as well. He went early fourth round, I think. So I would take him.
All right, guys, look, that wraps it up. Please, in the comments, let us know who caught the worst stray, Darren Waller or Tank Dell. But from Matt and from Cory and from Mike, you guys have a great Wednesday.